Greetings. I'm Dr. Aldrich neuropsychologist and psychotherapist in Miami, faculty at Pepperdine University, and the founder of the Center for Neuropsychology and Consciousness. Welcome to the CNC Dialogues. It's my pleasure today to introduce Dr. David Chai from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Dr. Chai is a specialist in ancient and medieval Chinese philosophy with an emphasis on Daoism. He is the author and editor of several notable books, with one of my favorites being Zhuangzi and the Becoming of Nothingness. He is well known for advancing the study of Meontology, or the philosophy of non-being. We're honored to have Professor Chai with us today and look forward to learning from his insights and experience. Today we covered what Meontology is and how Daoism offers a route for studying the nature of nothingness, or no-thingness. We dive into Daoist cosmology, distinguishing between non-being and nothingness, the Dao, the One, the Thing, and the natural world. We transition into the overcoming of nihilism through the Dao, as well as his thoughts on Daoist metaphysics. We talk about the benefits of nothingness, the concept of uselessness, and circular time rather than linear. We cover many other topics and some parables alongside their interpretations. Finally, we end on a series of rapid-fire questions to get a better understanding of who David is as a person. If any of this sounds interesting to you, feel free to skip around. Okay, so, ontology, as the study of being, is a term that's well known to Western philosophy. You, on the other hand, introduced Zhuangzi under the tradition of Meontology, or the study of non-being. How do we study non-being, and what is Meontology?
So to begin, the origin of the word meontology comes from the Greek meon, which literally means the study of non-being, or what does not exist. And for the Greeks, this is kind of paradoxical because what does not exist literally cannot be discussed. Daoism, on the other hand, has a lot to say about supposed non-existence, things that we are unable to know or beyond our physical senses to detect. So they talk about it not using the word meontology, but in terms of non-being, nothingness, emptiness, mystery, profoundness, these words. So in order to capture the dynamic aspect of this nothingness, I borrow the Greek word meontology, as a way to counter the heavy emphasis in Western philosophy on ontology, which is the study of being, of existence. And I do this because in Daoism, the metaphysical priority of becoming or creation is with nothingness. But if we just use the Western understanding of nothingness as voidness or lack, then you can't apply it to Daoism. Because in Daoism, nothingness does have a kind of ontological potential, if you like, what I call creative potential or creative possibility, which are tied to the Dao. So Meontology is applied in this sense as a way of describing the Dao's creative power, if you like, but a power that is based in nothingness.
Excellent. So nothingness is not a void, not a vacuum. In Daoism, it's considered something like dynamic potential. There's still something there. Nonetheless, it's no thing in particular. It's nothing concrete in that sense. It is and it is
Exactly.
not.
Yes.
Okay, so the term non-being versus nothingness, how do you distinguish between those two?
Right. So the Chinese character wu means both. It's also used in a grammatical sense as a negative particle to denote the notness of something. So you want to say something is lacking, you are without something, or it's not there. In classical Chinese, you would use the word wu. In Taoist philosophy, it can be translated interchangeably as non-being, non-existence, nothingness, etc. For me, the way I develop my understanding of Taoist philosophy, it's a bit different from my peers, my colleagues, in that as you just said, I have two levels in which this character Wu, or nothingness, non-being operates. One, the non-being, the ontic level in the Western sense, to
Mm.
denote, um, for example, the state of death. You would say it's a state of non-being. So if something previously was alive, living, present, and it turns into the opposite, then you would say it's in a state of non-being. Nothingness, however, is not referring to material emptiness. That's a different word, xu, or void, hollowness, 空. Um, I use nothingness in a metaphysical sense to denote the realm in which the Tao is existing. So
Mm.
without getting bogged down by immanent, transcendent, all these Western terms, I use Wu to denote these two levels of experiencing the Tao, because you can't know it directly, owing to
Mm.
the fact that it's not a thing. It doesn't have physical substance or any known properties.
Mm.
So nothingness is a way for us to uncover uh, the presence of the Tao within all things.
I see. Okay. So could we say non-being is at an individual level, whereas nothingness is at the cosmic level? Is that fair to say, or?
Yeah, nothingness permeates the universe, so it's
Okay.
everywhere. It's in all things, even if we're unaware of it.
Mm.
Um, Whereas non-being, it's not. So, as I said, if something dies, it returns to a state of non-existence. We could say that is an apt understanding of what is non-being.
Mm.
Um, Nothingness can also be used to describe mental states, um, or other things related to the mind, to the intellect, um, to physiology and biology.
Mm.
We can say there is nothingness within the body,
Mm.
in terms of the the veins are hollow entities, yes, but the fact that there is nothingness within them allows the flow of blood. The
Mm.
lungs are filled with empty cavities, but
Mm.
essentially it's a being encapsulating, surrounding an inner nothingness, and that
Right.
allows us to breathe. The lung expands and it contracts. The
Right.
the womb of a woman
Right.
is an inner nothingness,
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
cavity, a void-like presence in which life is born.
Right.
And this is really analogous to the way the Tao generates or creates things. Within a womb of nothingness, beings emerge and then they enter the world
Mm-hmm.
by leaving the state of nothingness, yet they carry the attributes of nothingness and physical properties of nothingness
Mm.
within them
Right.
throughout their lives. So
Mm.
it's not a state of uh, I'm born out of nothing into a world of being, and therefore I'm no longer connected to that world of nothing. You are inseparable from it.
Right. It's interesting to think about this from multiple levels of analysis, right? So you mentioned it from the physiological level, but if we rewind our lives back to high school physics, one of the wow factors, right, was this idea that we're
Hmm.
99% empty space. And while the empty space, there are forces undergoing there, there
Yeah.
nonetheless is this idea of, well, emptiness of this gap there. Okay, so
Mhm.
nothingness in your work is Dao's milieu. It's the Dao's playground where the Dao moves and realizes its creativity. You've talked about this. Does nothingness precede the Dao, or do they coexist?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you read the two founding works of Taoist philosophy, or Taoist thought, if you don't want to distinguish between philosophy and religion, because the Chinese didn't do that, it's very clear that nothingness precedes being,
Mm.
but it's there at the same time as the Tao. Uh, and this poses an interesting question in terms of cosmology, cosmogony, perhaps even if you want to go to theology.
Mm.
Would it be possible for the creator, this generative entity, to create things without the presence of nothingness? So, to put it differently, within what kind of space do things emerge if
Mhm.
that space is not an empty nothingness?
Right.
Would it be possible for creation to happen if there only existed being in the world? So Taoism is very clear in the text and in the commentarial tradition.
Mm.
that the answer is no, that beings always come after non-being slash nothingness, but it's there alongside the Tao.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so they very much coexist. One relies on the other. Nonetheless, nothingness does, in a sense, precede the Tao, but the Tao and nothingness work together for creation to unfold. Now, when people think about the Tao, or when they think about Taoism, they think about it as a philosophy of nature in some sense.
Right.
But I know
Mhm.
that you distinguish the natural world from the Tao. One thing is that you've mentioned in the book is that while the natural world is a process, the Tao is not considered a process in the same sense. So I wonder if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah. Um, so the Chinese for nature wasn't the word we think it is. So the character, the two characters, 自然,
Mm-hmm.
in classical Chinese actually means self-so or spontaneous, something along those lines. And it didn't mean in pre-Christian China nature in terms of natural world. To describe that kind of setting, they used the terms heaven and earth, or all that is below heaven. So 天下, right, in the world, below heaven, refers to the world in which we and all other living things exist. So although nature includes all things, what the Taoists call the myriad things or the 10,000 things,
Mm-hmm.
nature is bound to certain laws or principles, which are in turn influenced by greater laws or principles, which are in the domain of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So principles or laws in Chinese are li. So you have the principles of human, so ren li. You have the principles of earth, so related to the physicality of life, di li. And then you have these kind of cosmological principles which govern all things on earth, and those are tian li. But the principles of heaven and earth are still subservient to the principles and natural laws of the Tao, which operate at a cosmo or universal level. So I wouldn't say it's a process, but there is definitely a hierarchy, an order, a natural order.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a divine order, but a natural order that conforms to the way that the Tao generates or creates things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But the way that things are born and live their lives, and the ups and downs that they encounter throughout their lived experience until they ultimately pass away, these are processes that are knowable, predictable, and later when we get to the invention of Chinese medicine in the Han Dynasty, this was the source of treatment. You
Mm.
go back to nature, you discover the cause of one's symptoms,
I see.
and that is what you treat. You don't treat the symptoms directly; you treat the cause of the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So that is
Mm-hmm.
that is a process, and it's very much a natural process. Um,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to sort of orient the audience towards the cosmology and the sort of sequence, if we want to call it, of how everything's unfolding, and also for you to
Hmm.
speak a little more about one part of it. So we have nothingness, we have the Tao, we have
Yeah.
something that we call the One, which you've defined before
Hmm.
as an, not here, but in your book, as an undifferentiated wholeness in which things are in their original natural state. This is the initial
Right.
phase of Tao's unfolding, the root of being, the realm where being emerges, non-being
Hmm.
returns, right? And then there's also this something you call the thing, an original
Hmm.
self-replicating model. I know that it relates to Heidegger's work, and Heidegger used it in relationship to Lao Tzu. So I'm wondering if
Hmm.
you could explain to us what is the thing, and how does that connect to our reality?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the cosmogonic process is you begin with a state of nothingness. So there are no things existing in the universe.
Mm,
And then the Tao gets busy creating, generating things, um, the planets and the stars and whatnot. And you get heaven and earth. And once heaven and earth are formed, then things on Earth are formed, and on and on and on. You get to the infinitude of life. But at the very beginning, before there are humans, this kind of collectivity of being, myriad
Mm,
things, are undivided, they are unnamed, they are non-hierarchical, and,
mhm,
and so on. Now, why is that? Because the Tao doesn't deliberately divide things according to names or attributes or properties of good and bad, beautiful and ugly. These are attributes that we humans assign to things. But in nature, the natural world, they don't exist.
mhm,
So a thing is beautiful unto itself. It's not that other living things are saying to that thing, hey, you are beautiful or you are ugly, so you are
mhm,
more or less worthy. No, we do that. And this is how we structure the world and how we come to reach the decisions that we do. But originally, things are in a state of harmony,
mhm,
or undivided unity, right? A collectivity, meaning they are in a state of nameless cohabitation, coexistence.
mhm,
And for Taoism, that is the state of oneness. Because for us, when we first showed up on Earth, we find it very confusing, the state of chaos. Everything is jumbled and living together. It's hard to make sense of. So how do we bring order to the world? Well, we assign names, we assign properties and attributes and characteristics, and then we rank them. We give them hierarchies, and this is how we bring order to disorder.
mhm.
Um,
David,
but
may I
if you want to
interject?
follow Taoism, yeah,
Mm, sorry. Just to clarify something here. So, in this state of
hmm,
undifferentiation and namelessness,
yeah,
is everything in this state, in your mind, reflexive and automatized in some sense? Like there is no self
uh,
consciousness existing?
well, yeah, I wouldn't. You wouldn't say that things are living their life in an autonomous sense. So everything in a pre-human world
Hmm.
is in a state of codependency. So codependency or mutuality, however you want to describe it, basically it's a
Mutual.
state of harmony, right?
Sure.
And this
Sure.
harmony is ostensibly a state of oneness.
Mm,
Uh, so although things have their particular lives, they are not saying, oh, I'm a free being and I can do whatever I want to do. No, all things are bound to natural laws. They are
mhm,
bound to the limits of their own physical form, to their
mm.
own um, lifespan,
Okay.
to the situation in which they live. So they have
Hmm.
struggles, they have successes, ebbs
Sure.
and flows, peaks and valleys, if you like. And this is all
Right.
natural. There's nothing in nature to say that, oh, this year your offspring all died,
Hmm.
during the first year of life, so you're a bad parent. No, that doesn't happen. You just
Hmm.
repeat next year, right?
Sure. Sure.
Um,
So if everything
so,
was in harmony, uh, when
hmm,
did abstraction come into play as a result of, like when I think of abstraction coming in and the use of a word, any word comes into play and it
mhm,
categorizes something. And an image that comes to mind, if it's helpful for anyone listening, I always imagine this sort of like, we can think of it as an uncarved block of wood, or we can think of it as just like a pure solid block. And when a word
right,
comes out, it creates a fragment or a fissure or
uh-huh,
something. And the more words that keep coming out there, it becomes more and more fragmented until, we're now focused on all the little parts as opposed to the whole in and of itself or its pre-existing state. But I'm wondering, again, if everything was perfect and in harmony, when did the disruption happen that would lead to the necessity for abstract
yeah.
thinking or speaking?
Well, according to Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi and other early Daoist thinkers,
Mm-hmm.
um, the problem begins with language, with human language.
Mm-hmm.
So the analogy of the uncarved block, which was from Dao De Jing, the character Pu,
Mm-hmm.
essentially means simplicity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a simplicity that is pure potential. If you take the trunk of a tree, you are able to carve it in an infinite variety of ways. You're able to carve wooden ladles and bowls and cups and all of that. So you are creating utensils,
Mm-hmm.
right? Useful objects out of something that for itself is essentially useless, right? The tree grows as a tree, not growing with the objective that, hey, I'm going to grow so that I can be carved to satisfy human needs for material objects, right? It just grows as a tree. But
Yeah.
it's the potential of the wood to be carved and shaped like clay, to be molded, or any
Mm.
other malleable material. The human body is an example, or the body of any living thing
Yeah.
can be carved and shaped according to climate and other factors. Um, so it's not that that the Tao creates a tree to appease the desire of humans to make objects to make our lives more comfortable or easy. No,
Mm-hmm.
we do that, right? So this is
Mm-hmm.
part of the brutality of human thought,
Mm.
is that we are always thinking and trying to devise different ways to utilize things.
Mm.
To do what? Not for the sake of nature as a whole, but for our
Mm-hmm.
own selfish, um, gratification.
Right.
In nature, we don't have that. Everything is done for the benefit of the collective, of the
Mm-hmm.
whole. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the vessels or instruments that humans um, have used to great effect, besides the mind, is language. And as I said, Daoism viewed the natural world as a state of undifferentiated wholeness, meaning a pre-named and divided state of unity.
Mm-hmm.
So when we develop words and we start to use words and we start to give authority to said words, then a whole slew of problems results from that.
Mm-hmm.
And modern society is overrun with words and information tied to
Right.
words. And it
Yep.
creates a lot of misunderstanding, miscommunication, ill intent,
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth. So part of the Taoist message is to be more Pu-like, to be more simplistic. So
Right.
to reduce our usage and our dependency on words and go back
Mm.
to a simpler time when we have a body-to-body communicative
Mm.
encounter with other things.
Right.
Um, and it's hard to do that, especially those of us who teach, to encourage
Right.
students to, you know, talk to each other instead of texting or doing whatever.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
a dying skill that we have. But in high antiquity, before there was written words, right? You just have spoken words.
Mm-hmm.
This is what people did. They sat with each other and they shared their thoughts, and they were able to partake in the emotional um, moments of others, whether it's good or bad. And this is a kind of returning to the holism, to the oneness, to the unity of lived experience. And Taoism today, you've written about this in your own works, was very adamant that this is something that humanity, as the centuries pass from high antiquity, so roughly, like in Lao Tzu or Zhuangzi's time, 6th, 5th, 4th century BCE, they already recognized the decline of society due to an overusage and over adherence to concepts. Um, and saying, okay, we need to forget those, go back to simpler, more pure modes of thinking
Mm-hmm.
so that we
Mm-hmm.
can rediscover the genuineness of the lived experience. And this is
Right.
what life is about. It's
Right.
about the experience and gaining the most, learning the most from our experiences firsthand, not what we read or what others say, because that is not necessarily hearsay, but it's a second, third person experience and it's not us. And because
Right.
each living thing is different, is unique,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the Taoists say we need to have a personal first person encounter with good and bad to learn how it affects us, how it motivates our likes, our dislikes, shapes us as a person, our character, our
Mm-hmm.
nature,
Right.
and not to use that then to say to others, well, what's good for me is good for you, what's bad for me is bad for you. No, Taoism
Mm-hmm.
says each individual must do this at their own speed
Mm-hmm.
and on their own path.
Right.
So this is a kind of therapy, if you like, a very, very old form of
Yeah,
therapy,
absolutely.
but it's very, very relevant
Hmm.
today.
Yeah. So people start, in a sense, falling for the map as what's real versus the territory that they actually
Hmm.
inhabit. And when they get lost in this world of abstraction or symbols, they can drift astray into places that are no longer in contact with the actuality of the situation. And, the convergence here, I think, and maybe I'll bring my book a little bit right here, is the
Yeah.
phase of separation in the first part of the book where I described how we've become astray, obviously highly
Hmm.
influenced by Daoism. And so this idea of being separated, I think, at least when I keep thinking about it evolutionarily and thinking about classical Tao also, is the idea that it can lead to greater amounts of creative unfolding for us to be to have this separation from reality or from nature, in the sense that we can double back and potentially complement or how do I put this, provide some other form of creative output. But the problem with separation is that it also opens up the possibility for us to act discordantly with it.
Hmm.
Right. And so I speak about different networks in the brain that may relate to that, like the default mode network. I call it the modes network for mental time travel, others, and the self. Um,
Right. Right.
and also the central executive network. These two networks allowing us to suspend the immediacy of space time so that we can better analyze what may be happening and ultimately survive in some way, but also to reflect and bring in, I think, more creative input to the world in some
Yeah.
fashion. But again, so the point here is that separation can lead to discord, can lead to alienation, but it can also lead to greater levels of harmony. And I think that's, at least
Right.
for me,
Right.
what sort of resolved this issue of if everything was in harmony before, in this state of oneness and
Hmm.
undifferentiation, like when did the first person to suddenly come up with language in some way? Like, why was that an issue that needed to be addressed, or something that happened? And I guess the way that I viewed it is starting off with this phase of separation emerging
Hmm.
for evolutionary reasons. Um, the other thing is that when I read the Huainanzi, specifically the basic warp, that whole
Right.
chapter, right, it talks about humans. A big part of the reason why we strayed, or why we ended up finding lots of issues, is because we started acting in unnatural ways, right? Which, with me,
Exactly. Yeah.
very much connected with this scientific idea of evolutionary mismatch, where the original conditions
Hmm.
that we evolved for are no longer the conditions that we exist in. Again, I think leading to all sorts of other challenges that we face. Did you have a comment
Yeah.
or something? I
Taoism
was
would
going to go
say
back to
we
something
we've
else.
we've strayed from the Tao. We've lost the Tao.
The Dao, yeah. Hmm.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So um, they also would say, "Oh, the Tao is lost in the world." Of course, this is not possible
right.
because the Tao is, in a religious sense, it's omnipresent, right? It's
Hmm.
everywhere. It's in all things. Um, so when they say the Tao is lost in the world, it means that people are not trying to cultivate themselves in a spiritual sense. So
Hmm.
to be more natural,
Hmm.
more in touch with nature, with themselves and with others.
Hmm.
Um, but they are pursuing, um, you could say, an artificial uh, means of self enhancement, and referring to the Confucians. So,
Hmm.
in Confucian thought, classical Confucianism, the mark of being a good person, um, and for them, it would ultimately be a man, because they were the ones who were educated and worked and so on, was to have a higher state of virtue
Hmm.
than others. Right. So we say in modern parlance, a higher state of civility,
Hmm.
of culture, right? Um, and virtue is comprised of four properties, four um, elements, if you like. The first one is the Chinese character ren, which means the old translation benevolence. Today we would translate it as humaneness, right? Why? Because the Chinese character has a radical of person with two. So two people together, right, engaging in acts of kindness, compassion towards each other. This is what it means to be humane. Uh, um, so you partake in the suffering of others. You try to alleviate suffering of others. You try to educate those who are ignorant. You try to be charitable. Uh, um, so philanthropy is a big part of that, especially here in Hong Kong. Um, this is the mark of your culture, your
Sure.
civilization, not civilization, your civility. So humaneness is the first most important one, but then there's the motivation behind your trying to be humane, and they call that yi, or righteousness, or doing right conduct. So this is a kind of um, psychological, emotional filter that either enables or prevents you from acting out your desires, your wishes.
Mm.
So if what you want to do actually proves to be inhumane, right? Then the concept of righteousness should prevent you from doing that. This is not the right
Yeah.
thing for me to do, so I will hold
Right.
back. I will not do it, or I will not
Right.
say, right?
So in science, that would
But that is
correspond to
based upon,
inhibition.
yeah, that's based upon two deeper
Mm.
characteristics. One is li, ritual propriety, how you conduct yourself in the world using your
Mm-hmm.
body and your words, and
Mm.
then wisdom, which is derived from books, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your knowledge. So the
Mm-hmm.
words, the speeches of the ancient, sages or tyrants, you memorize them all. You're able to recite them from memory to show that, hey, I'm reflecting well upon my king or upon my father, or whoever my superior
Sure.
is. And I
Mm-hmm.
show, by acting in a way that reflects that. And the result, hopefully, is that you view me as a humane person. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Daoism says this is all artificial because in nature, there's no such thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's natural virtue, but it
Mm-hmm.
has nothing to do with being humane, being righteous,
Mm.
acting in a ritualized manner, or
Right.
having wisdom. You have natural knowledge, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So the Taoists blamed the Confucians and others
Yeah.
um, for introducing these notions into
Right.
human society,
Right.
talking about it, teaching it to others,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what caused people to lose interest and
Right.
ultimately to
Mm-hmm.
lose the Tao, lose the way,
Right.
because they were not living the way that is natural, inherent to
Natural to
them.
them.
They are now
Right.
following the ways
Mm-hmm.
of this teacher or his disciples.
Right. It's also the idea, right, that as soon as one has the intention of being good, they are no longer naturally good.
Exactly, and Lao Tzu
Those,
says something like that, right? Beautiful
yeah.
words are not truthful. Truthful words are not beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but to go back to the point that you were making regarding your own work, in the Tao Te Ching, we don't have this theme, but in the Zhuangzi we have a lot, and that's the theme of dreams.
Mm.
And Zhuangzi talks uh, quite a lot about dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting because his dreams are not dreams serving a kind of Freudian purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They're ones of critique or of mockery.
Mm.
So whenever there's a dream, usually it's something from nature, be it an animal or a tree or
Yeah.
what have you, scolding Zhuangzi or somebody else, maybe
Mm.
Confucius, and
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Look, you think you are this smart, do-gooder human. What do you know about my state and my perspective of life? You know
Mm-hmm.
nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
you have no business speaking about me in the way or portraying me in the way that you are doing." And this
Right.
is very clever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another use of dreams um, is to actually question the validity of the reality. Right? So you were talking about stepping outside of reality to perhaps gain a truer, more authentic sense of reality. Zhuangzi does the same thing. He has a famous passage where he dreams he's a butterfly.
Mm.
And I'm sure you know this,
Mm.
right? And then he wakes up and he questions himself, uh, am I now Zhuangzi the human who was just dreaming he's a butterfly? Or am I now a butterfly dreaming I am Zhuangzi the human? I can't tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says rhetorically, is there a difference? This is a very profound thing to say. How
Mm-hmm.
do we know we are not in, and this is those who are interested in modern day cosmology,
Mm-hmm.
how are we not to know that we're in a computer simulation?
Hmm.
Is there like a matrix type programmer, and we're part of that? Well,
Right.
for Taoism, they would say perhaps, and the programmer is the Tao.
Mm.
And there's no
Yeah.
way for us to know the motives or the ultimate outcome of this game of life that we are suddenly
Hmm.
thrown into. So
Okay.
it really gives you a very profound shock, and it makes you question
Hmm.
the motive. Why am I chasing after this? Why am I chasing after that?
Right.
When instead I should just be focusing on the life that I have been born with and
Hmm.
trying to make the most of that. That's one of the central
Right.
messages
Okay.
of Daoist thoughts.
Excellent. So, David, I have a bunch of thoughts here, and I want to say it before I forget. So, the first part is while Freudian interpretation may not resonate with the Taoist presentation of dreams in the Zhuangzi,
Hmm.
Jungian work actually seems to have some resonance there in the
Yes.
sense that it's providing a complementary attitude that's going to balance
Hmm.
out. And as you may know, Jung even considered himself a Taoist at some point when he was
Yes, yes. He
when
read the text. He wrote about that.
when you read it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So
yeah, yeah.
that's really interesting also. But okay, so that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to note when it comes to you mentioned the computer simulation. There is a very interesting theory from, for example, Donald Hoffman. Have you heard of him?
Hmm.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
excellent. So interface theory of perception, that this is just an interface that we're operating and behind which are conscious agents. I guess we're already getting into this territory of metaphysics. So
Yeah.
I'd be curious to understand, to hear you out on what your metaphysics might be, or what does it look like? Is it, there are different camps that are quite popular right now and being argued. Um,
Hmm.
so just to mention to the audience, right? We're almost touching on my first book rather than the second one, but nonetheless, the three main metaphysical camps that are out there um, are something like physicalism, which basically tries to reduce consciousness to anything that's physical. Another camp is
Right.
panpsychism, which believes that consciousness is a fundamental property of matter, and another one's objective idealism, which is this
Hmm.
idea that everything is mind, that matter doesn't even exist, that maybe matter is a phase of consciousness expressing itself, and that we're like, in Bernardo Kastrup's thoughts, these alters. He used the idea of dissociative identity disorder, previously known as multiple personality, where there could be multiple personalities within a single brain, but we're sort of these different personalities of a much greater mental process, a mind at large. Um, so I don't want to get too deep into this, but my own views. I very much like pan-experientialism, which relates to the work of Alfred North Whitehead. But David, I want to hear it from
Uh-huh.
you because my audience has heard a lot from me about this stuff, anyways. So go ahead.
Um, yeah. How to describe Taoist metaphysics? That's in simple terms, not an easy thing to do. Um, you mentioned the Huainanzi. It's a text. It's a syncretic text
Mm,
that is quite heavily influenced from Taoism. There's a lot of parts that are repeated verbatim in the text, um, mixed in with Han cosmology and medicine and other things. Um, the interesting thing with doing Chinese philosophy is it's never static. It's always building upon previous earlier
mhm.
masters. So it's constantly evolving. And we see that the Huainanzi is an evolution of the Warring States texts, the Dao De Jing and the Zhuangzi. Um, Taoist metaphysics wouldn't be any of the three that you have mentioned.
Mhm.
That's quite clear. Um,
How about, sorry, let me just
it
throw this one out there. I thought this was an
Yeah.
interesting one, but how about neutral monism from Bertrand Russell? The idea that matter and mind exist in something greater, a neutral element that contains both of them, but also is greater than each of them.
Yeah, that would be the mind only school of Buddhism, I would say.
Okay.
Uh, which originally was Indian, came to China um,
So remember, neutral
around
monism, though, is
yeah.
not mind specifically. It goes beyond mind. So I don't know if we would call it mind
Uh,
only. That's the interesting part about it. It proposes a neutral element that's greater than both mind and matter, but also encompasses each of them,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that's the
Well,
neutrality portion.
yeah, not getting off track, but mind only or consciousness only school of Buddhism, 唯识论 in Chinese. Um, the how does that? You have the storehouse consciousness, which is basically the mind of Buddha, which houses all the experiences of all so-called consciousnesses, which don't exist.
Mm.
So you and myself and everybody else, our minds, our consciousnesses are illusory.
Mm-hmm.
They are all seeded with experiences of previous lives,
Sure.
but they're all coming out of and returning to this storehouse, this
Mm.
warehouse,
Mm-hmm.
in American parlance, consciousness, which is that of Buddha. Um, we don't have anything like that in Daoism. There is no uh, overarching mind or consciousness governing, pulling the puppet strings, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Sure.
Lao Tzu is very clear on that in describing the Tao as the mother of all things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because the Tao is the supreme creator, but the Tao doesn't dictate the fate of things. So it
Mm-hmm.
gives things life, it gives things the natural attributes to live the life according to the form, the
Mm-hmm.
body that they've been given, and it gives that form enough energy or breath, qi,
Mm-hmm.
to live a certain lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your fate, right? And this is your inborn nature. You can't do that. So
Mm-hmm.
Daoism argues part of the metaphysics in terms of philosophy of death. You are born at a particular time that's beyond your control, and your death is at a particular time and also beyond your control if it is natural, right? If you wish to alter, to prevent, or to speed up your demise, that is not natural. That is artificial. That is selfish,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore Taoism would not support that. So you've been given the means to live a life of potentially X number of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you will be sick, you will be healthy, you will be strong, you'll be weak, you'll have success, failure, da 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 da. But these are things that are not, a judgment of you as a living being. This is just part and parcel of life. And everything in existence goes through that, even
Mm-hmm.
inanimate objects. So the metaphysics is basically, a cosmology, a cosmogony of the Tao as creator, as
Mm-hmm.
the root or source of all things in
So we
terms
wouldn't
of
call
their be-
we wouldn't call the Tao conscious. It
no.
would be unconscious or non-conscious.
Well, yeah, because the Tao is formless. Because it's
Okay.
formless,
Sure.
it has no attributes that are, um, sayable, knowable.
Okay. So the
So we
consciousness
we
that we our consciousness, then how does that come from the Tao?
uh, that's a question that is not raised in the text.
Sure.
So
So
why are
just
we
for
thinking
you
beings?
so
They
for
they
you,
don't ask
David.
that.
Okay. So just
For me,
outside of the text, yeah. Just what's your opinion on that? Yeah.
well, there was a thinker, a commentator, who lived in the third century CE by the name of Wang Bi, and he wrote commentaries to the Tao Te Ching, to the
Mm-hmm.
Book of Changes, the I Ching, um, and he has a few essays of his own, um, uh, invention, and one of them is related to the Book of Changes. He's talking about the hexagrams. So I'm sure many of your listeners may have seen the hexagrams of the Book of Changes, right? A number, 6 lines, combination of broken,
Mm.
solid lines, right? And they
Okay.
alternate in terms of their position. So he wrote this essay called "Clarifying the Images." So the image is the picture of the hexagram. So Mingjiang, and there he says, in terms of human thinking, first we have an image in mind, right? We have a thought.
Sure.
Then we try to picture it. We create an image of it. Then we use words to try and describe the image.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where does that take us? He says, once you, so then he does a regression. right? Because we want to return to a state of original thoughts, original thinking.
Mm.
So if when you get to the state of using words to describe the images that are a painting of your thoughts, once you get to that level, if you remain there, then your thinking will not be genuine
Mm.
because you're at the level of superficiality.
Mm.
Why? Because words are basically restricted in terms of the number of meanings that they can have.
Sure.
Right? This is also how we structure the knowable world.
Mm.
We assign one meaning or several meanings, a handful of meanings to one word. If
Mm.
each word had an infinite number of meanings, words become gibberish. They become
Mm.
meaningless,
Mm.
and then nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, they
Right?
constrain
So
us. Yeah.
from the level of words, when
Mm.
you get there, you forget the words to return to the level of image, right? Then you forget the image to go back to the original seed, which is the thought. And the thought is the thing that is fluid. Your thoughts are changing,
Mm.
right? There's a dynamism to them that images, because once you create an image, it's fixed, it's static. And words are even more static than an image because you see an image and I'm able to interpret it with my imagination. What does it mean? So I use words to say what does it mean. But
Mm.
words, they're just there, right? They're
Mm.
static.
Mm.
Um, so that's not how you live your life. This may be the Confucian way or another tradition in ancient China, but for Taoism, it's all about dynamism,
Mm.
fluidity,
Right.
spontaneity,
Right.
which is another way of saying natural. To
Sure.
live a naturalistic life
Mm.
is to be able to change at the spur of a moment,
Mm.
right? Whatever your impulse is, whatever your intent may be or change to be, you follow that so long as it fits with who you are.
Mm.
Now, who you are, not in terms of identity, but who you are as a living thing. So
Mm.
we may say, in a metaphysical sense, what you are. Yes, Aldrich, you're a human male, but you're more than that, right?
Mm.
You've built up a body of experiences and preferences and what have you, and that defines you. Yeah, but part of that is hidden within you. The outside world cannot see that. So
Mm.
how do you share that? If you try to share that through words, then it's only a partial sharing.
Yeah.
So this is why I said in Daoism, the human encounter, the person-to-person encounter, is a much more valuable experience,
Mm.
or the person-to-nature encounter is a much more valuable as a learning lesson
Mm.
experience than simply reading of those experiences in books.
Yeah.
And you and I, as authors, this is not a advice that we want to hear. Oh, we should get rid of all books because it's a false form, it's a
Mm.
dead form of knowledge.
Mm.
Uh, um, so the metaphysics of Taoism is very much tied into that. The lived experience is very phenomenological,
Mm.
but it's a phenomenology that's not tied only to the human life world.
Sure.
It's about the non-life world of the Tao,
Okay.
if you want to put
Okay.
it into odd terms, which is the life world of all things, right?
Mm.
Not exclusively human, not non-exclusively um, not other things, right? There's no exclusion in
Mm.
Taoism. It's all encompassing. It's all inclusive.
Right.
So this kind of metaphysics, yeah, it's hard to characterize.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Relational.
I
It's highly relational, highly process, meaning oriented. There is something I wanted to ask you. And I know it's a few steps backwards, but something that's been on my mind. Um, when you talk about the one cosmologically, state of undifferentiating, when people are engaged in meditation and at some point experience a oneness, have they returned to this one that you're speaking of, or is that a little bit different from what you mean by that?
if you do meditation
Hmm.
in whatever form,
Sure,
because I know today there's many schools of meditation and,
sure.
and
Say it's an apophatic
wellness being whatever,
meditation. Yeah,
right?
okay,
If you can do it such that you lose attachment to the notion of selfhood
mm-hmm.
or personhood,
Mm-hmm.
so your identity. your named self,
Mm-hmm.
and all that that represents and symbolizes. If you are able to free yourself of that, then you have returned to a state of harmony or oneness with the Tao,
Okay.
right?
So
Because this
it's
is the way that all natural, all non-human species, this is how they live.
right.
Yes, they're able to identify, their fellow herd members or clan members or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's all done namelessly.
Mm-hmm. It's through an
So there's an
experiential mode.
unspoken,
Mm-hmm.
exactly, there's an unspoken element to that,
Yeah.
and humans have forgotten how to do that. So Taoism,
Mm-hmm.
the relevance today is drawing attention to this.
Right.
Uh, how can we put aside all the conceptual baggage that we carry with us
Mm-hmm.
and view the person not on the outside, right? The
Right.
face and the the physicality, because that changes, that evolves over time.
Mm-hmm.
You as a baby, you are different from somebody in university, and then different from somebody in
Mm-hmm.
midlife, and then again different
Mm-hmm.
from old life
Yeah.
outwardly, but inwardly
Right.
you are constantly evolving, constantly
Mm-hmm.
changing, and the external can't keep up with that, and it's not a true reflection
Mm-hmm.
of those changes and those returnings to earlier beginnings
Mm-hmm.
and reevaluating and reusing and all that.
So,
Um,
so the one is
so
reachable
so
then.
meditation is a way of doing that, of
Sure.
rediscovering
Mm-hmm.
your authentic or your genuine self, your true self, if you
Okay.
like.
Okay. So David, then the thing, then the one precedes the thing, and we can reach the one through meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. So
Yes, but we cannot return to the state of the time when there is the primal thing. So this thing with a capital T
mhm,
refers to the original thing from which all things in its line
mhm.
come forth.
Okay.
So the original, when the Tao is generating things, the first tree that represents the thingliness of trees. This is something Heidegger's
Hmm.
talked about a lot, but
Sure.
but again, he's getting some of that from Taoism.
Hmm.
The first ape, so the apeness of being an ape,
Hmm.
right? So the first ape is the thing, the ape
Hmm.
thing. The
Hmm.
first humanoid, however far back you want to go.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. Um, Now, the texts don't speak of the thing in the way that I do
Yeah.
because they don't want to stop there.
Hmm.
They want to go all the way back to the time before there were things.
Hmm.
And this is the time when there is only the Tao.
Sure.
Because this is how you have an experience of rediscovery, of
Yeah.
self-discovery,
Yeah.
right? You need to somehow transcend the glass ceiling, if you like, the cosmological or the metaphysical glass ceiling, and go back to the time before there was such a barrier.
Hmm.
And the barrier is erected by us
Right.
through our use of concepts,
Hmm.
normative values,
Hmm.
which are all tied to language and the
Hmm.
thinking that occurs through language. So Zhuangzi, Laozi, other Taoists, they want us to move away from language-based thinking and return to thought-based thinking or image-based thinking,
Yeah.
which is much more fluid, dynamic, and free.
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
And for me, I think that's what meditation does.
Hmm.
Now, I've never done it. I don't know, but
Oh, you don't meditate?
um, I don't. Not in the sense that you're thinking. No.
Do you engage
So
in Tai
my
Chi
my
or
my
other
meditation is
practices?
when I'm writing stuff.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a kind of real time. I'll just say flowing forth of or a cleansing process.
Okay.
Yeah, I listen to music when I write, and that
Hmm.
helps
Hmm.
helps with the process.
Okay.
But I don't do like yoga or other kinds of meditation, mental fasting. Zhuangzi has this actual
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
concept, right? Xinjai,
Hmm.
which is fasting of the mind,
Hmm.
and for some scholars, one that you know, Olivia Kahn, says actually this is an instance of meditation in
Mm-hmm.
ancient China. There's the
Yeah.
word fasting of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but later commentaries to this passage say, well, if the religious, they'll say, yeah, this is meditation. Others say this is a kind of mind awakening. So kind of mental expansion. I don't know if meditation does that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so cleansing of the mind, stilling, emptying the mind in
Mm-hmm.
order to do what? To reconnect with the Tao.
Yeah. What I
Because if
what
the
I
mind is full of thoughts and words, Zhuangzi
Mhm.
says there is no space for the Tao to enter
Mhm.
and then reside within the mind. And for the Chinese, it's the mind and the heart,
Yep.
right?
The
So the word
heart
xin
mind.
is heart mind together. We don't have this mind body, heart mind dualism. It's one and the same thing. So
Mhm.
you need to have a place of nothingness, a place of emptiness for the Tao to then
Mhm.
enter into and settle down. So this is why
Mhm.
when they speak of um, one's spirit, an
Mhm.
agitated spirit is not going to be inviting for the Tao.
Right.
You need to have the spirit that is reflective of the natural state of the Tao, which is still quiet emptiness.
Mhm.
Um, if that's not meditation, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
maybe the
Now,
Taoists are
what-
the inventors of meditation. I don't know.
one of
Perhaps
the
perhaps our Indian friends would dispute that, but I don't know.
one of the things I like about forgetting of the self, or sitting in forgetfulness, is this word forgetting. Like people obviously
Yes.
think they forget something, they lose it out of their mind, they let it go. But it's also, you separate forgetting, that you are getting something in return. It's like you're forgetting to
Yeah.
forget, right? And what you're getting is this enhanced connection with the Tao. But what I wanted us to move into is actually this idea of overcoming nihilism, because I'm familiar with Nishitani's account, right, in his book, The Self Overcoming Nihilism, where he basically
Yeah.
proposes these three movements, objectifying consciousness and being, to pressing so far into nihilism that the whole structure just collapses. Yet it collapses
Mhm.
into this lived realization of emptiness where the self and world can co-arise without this nihilistic devaluation. How does
Mhm.
returning to Tao overcome nihilism? How does it differ from that, if at all?
Yeah. Nishitani, um, of course, being somebody trained in Buddhism, but also he was trained in early modern European philosophy, Kant,
Mm-hmm.
Hegel, and others, and that really shaped a lot of his thinking. Um, we don't have the concept of nihilism in ancient Chinese thought.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the schools, we don't have that. Even early medieval, perhaps with the Sinicization of Buddhism in China in the Tang Dynasty,
Mm-hmm.
you may have this idea slowly enter the discourse. But prior to that, we don't have that. Um, in classical Daoism, because nothingness has a positivistic role. So Daoism, nothingness in Daoism is not annihilating.
Mm-hmm.
It's not destructive, right? It's the for me at least, and maybe um, colleagues, peers of mine may have different interpretations of that, readings of the text. For me, nothingness contributes to the generation of things.
Mm-hmm.
So as um, the non-existent raw material, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
within which forms are formed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so there is a emerging from nothingness, which is life, the becoming, you're becoming out of something. And then at death, there is a returning to. But this becoming and returning is to the same thing. It's not to the Tao, because then that would imply the Tao has substance, right? The Tao is physically giving birth to things, physically receiving things when they die. No. The Tao is setting into motion the process of generation, of creation. And that happens for me in the, as I use the word milieu because it sounds fancy, it's French, but you could say the realm, the reality, the sphere of nothingness. So
So wait
it
a second,
provides
just
a,
to clarify something. So this little marker right here, you would say this
mm,
is not part of the Tao, but the Tao gave rise to it.
yeah,
Okay,
it,
interesting.
that
I've always
pen,
thought that. Okay.
the pen exists in the reality
Uh
of
huh.
which the Tao is, it is all Tao. There's nothing beyond external to the Tao. The Tao is reality as we know it
Mm-hmm.
on the one hand. On the other hand, the Tao is reality as we are unable to know.
Okay, so no, so the Tao is encompassing, and it relates to everything is the Tao, right?
It is
Including
everything, but paradoxically, it is nothing.
it is nothing, right? Okay, yeah,
Right? And that
okay.
nothingness, the Tao is nothing, means the Tao is everything that has yet to appear, to enter into, to emerge, to be
Mm-hmm.
known, to be revealed into the
Mm-hmm.
reality that we call reality, the world.
Right.
But before that happens,
Mm-hmm.
again, going back to um, the metaphor of the womb,
Mm-hmm.
right? At the time of conception,
Mm-hmm.
life is there, but we can't see it, right, from the outside. But it's there, and it's growing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going through multitude of changes and so on. Yet there is a chance that that fetus will not grow into a healthy um, baby that is born as a living thing. There is a
Okay.
possibility of a miscarriage. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
born stillborn. So that previously living thing in a
Yeah.
state of hiddenness
Mm-hmm.
perishes before it actually can be known by the world.
Sure.
So it's kind of a gamble.
Okay.
Things are being, constructed, but whether they are successful in entering the world that we are able with our senses to know
Mm-hmm.
or not,
Right.
it's not guaranteed.
Okay.
So, on the one hand, you have the world of being. On the other hand, you have the
Mm-hmm.
complementary world of non-being or nothingness,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But it depends on your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Together, they are the Tao.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
So
Tao is
let.
not only nothingness, it's not only non-being,
Mm-hmm.
it's both simultaneously, but it's neither,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is,
Yeah.
for
It's
Kyoto
the not.
Buddhists, they love that kind of paradox, right?
Right.
It is and it's not, it is neither, it is neither,
It is the
um,
non-duality of duality and non-duality.
yeah, so it's the negation of negation and so on and so forth. But this is all
Right.
Zhuangzi's philosophy.
Sure. You had an awesome quote, a really good quote that I liked, and I thought it was a sort of nice response to how attuning to the Tao might help overcome nihilism. And you kind of put it in a different way that I'm still, it's still kind of digesting in my mind, we could say. And in your quote, I'm going to
Mhm.
just read it. It's
Yep.
returning is not a process whereby one rediscovers one's empirical self as a being amongst beings, nor is it discovery of a transcendent other. Rather, it is a transformative experience whereby one harmonizes with the Tao to complete the possibility of our existence. Could you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So in order for a person, because animals do this naturally, there's no need for them to meditate or do any special activity, because from the moment they are born, they are in tune with the Tao.
Mm-hmm.
They live according to the seasons. Their life patterns change. They accept their fates, on and on and on. But we struggle with everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
We question. We try to alter the path, so on and so forth. And uh, a lot of what we do is really tied to this idea of identity of selfhood.
Mm-hmm.
That this is my body, it's my property, and I am free to do with it as I wish. Laozi and Zhuangzi and other early Daoists, all Daoists would say, no, it's not your body. Yes, you were born from your mom and dad. They were born from their mom and dad. But you can go all the way back to the time before there were human beings,
Mm-hmm.
before there was anything, just the Tao. So your life actually is because the Tao made it so.
Mm.
So the idea that I am an autonomous, independent living thing for the Taoists is nonsense.
Mm.
You can't. You can't have that. Nothing can exist in a vacuum, even the Tao itself. Uh, um, so when we say return to the Tao, what does it mean? It means I rediscover that in the first moments of my lived existence as an infant, before I learn language, before I know anything, I am completely in tune with nature and by way of extension with the Tao.
Mm. So are
Right?
babies
So I don't need
perfectly
to
in tune
think
with the
how to
Tao?
live. I just live.
Mm.
And as adults, we have forgotten how to do that.
Sure.
So Laozi and Zhuangzi say we have to forget everything we've learned to go back to this time. Laozi
Mm.
especially, go back to the time of infancy when
Mm.
our mind is blank,
Mm.
when we are naive, when we are innocent, however you want to characterize it,
Sure.
because everything that we do is going to be natural.
Mm.
But as adults, we have to rediscover that uh, infant curiosity,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
That kind of spontaneous way of doing things without a care
Mm.
for how the world views us.
Sure.
Yeah, if I'm happy, I laugh. If I'm sad, I cry. If I'm hungry, I
Mm.
look for food. I don't
Mm.
need to ask anybody. I don't need anybody to teach me how to do it.
Mm.
It's inborn within me.
Mm.
That is that is something that the concept of selfhood, personhood, of identity prevents us from doing. Why? Because those are outward projections
Mm.
that we use to gain the support, the favor
Sure.
of the world. But
Mm.
Daoism would say, why do you need that?
Right.
You don't need that. You've been created with a form that has the ability to carry you through life to the end of the fate that you've been given, the lifespan that you've been given. Why would you try to undermine that, weaken that, get off the path of Tao through these distractions of seeking confirmation in what you do, avoiding, you know, criticism or what have you?
Mm.
Why would you do that? So this idea, the Taoist sage is usually portrayed as a kind of social misfit, not an outcast,
Mm.
as an awkward or even a crazy person, uh, but only in the sense that they are flaunting social norms.
Mm.
Why? Because
Mm.
they are in tune with the Tao. And as I
Mm.
said, in nature, there are no social norms in the human sense that
Mm.
you must dress a certain way, you must, engage with others in a certain way. Yes, there's ritualized behavior,
Mm.
courting dances and songs or mourning, all these things. Yes, we have them, natures have them. This is fine. Yeah, but when it comes to judgments of good and bad, right and wrong, all of that, that doesn't exist in nature, according to
Mm.
Daoism.
Sure. Sure.
So attunement to Tao is learning
Mm.
how to forget the need for and the justification
Mm.
of one's attachment
Yeah.
or distancing to those.
Mm.
We need to
Yeah. I mean,
abandon all
I
that
I
and
think
just,
it very
yeah,
yeah, very very straightforwardly, right? The identities and roles that we play or the personas that we hold up, these are all abstract concepts and narratives that ultimately can end up limiting one's capacity to be in the world because it pressures you into acting in a particular way. And by letting go of these boundaries, you're in a much more open, wide place where you can wander the wander the world in a more free fashion, enjoying the natural world and just simply being without the need to be performative in some way.
yeah, you be your true self,
Right. Yeah.
right?
So,
Today we would say that that's a kind of coming out, yeah.
mhm.
But Taoism say a coming out from what? You have always been this. There's nothing to
Right. It's
come out
always been
from.
there
You've
with you.
always been that. So long as you recognize that,
Hmm.
you accept that,
Yeah.
but also you accept the fact that that may change
Hmm.
over the course of your life. so you should
Mm-hmm.
not have regrets.
Right.
Then you are
What do you think?
living a natural life in attunement with the Tao.
Right. There's some interesting interpretations of Adam and Eve, and how when Eve eats the apple and they get kicked out of paradise, it's synonymous to them gaining consciousness. That before that, without the conscious awareness
Mm.
that they weren't suffering, that they were in harmony. But when she ate the apple, now they're all conscious and we all have to suffer. And I was wondering, and this is what I put in the book, maybe you read it, maybe you didn't, but the idea that from a Taoist perspective, even after eating the apple, they were always in heaven. They've simply forgotten the fact that they were in it. And the same thing would be
Yes.
with us, that we're so lost in our
Yeah.
abstractions that we're stuck here. Um, Okay, so I wanted to pivot just a bit here because we've gotten pretty theoretical, and I don't want to lose the audience too much. It's such a fascinating conversation with you. But for those
Yeah.
who are more practically oriented, how has the
Hmm.
concept of nothingness been useful to you? How have you applied it in your everyday life?
Yeah. First and foremost, as a scholar, who writes,
Hmm.
uh, um, the process of writing begins in nothingness.
Hmm.
You sit down to write a paper, write a book, prepare a lecture. Um, what are your first thoughts? Where do they come from? That's a state of quietude, of
Hmm.
darkness. Taoism loves the word darkness
Hmm. Hmm.
or profoundness,
Right.
mystery. These are all attributes
Hmm.
of the Tao,
Hmm.
characteristics, adjectives used to describe the Tao.
Hmm.
Um, Again, this idea of unsayability, unknowability, and so on. Um, Nothingness is perhaps the most unknowable of unknowables,
Hmm.
because Western philosophy has spilled a lot of ink over this. As soon as you start to speak of nothingness,
Hmm.
then it's no longer nothing; it's something. And this is, people say, oh, talking to me, oh, you wrote a book, 200 something pages about nothingness. Well, you've not said, you've said a lot about something, but you've not said anything about nothing. Because if you were to say something about nothing, you wouldn't say anything at all, right? Yeah, okay, that's funny. That's true. Um, so thinking begins in nothingness,
Hmm.
which is again why I describe it as creative potential or possibility.
Hmm.
Because
It's
when you close
also,
your eyes, you clear your mind.
yeah.
There's stuff happening in there, but
Hmm.
they've yet to gel, to come together into a recognizable form, which is a thought,
Hmm.
yeah, or an image of a thought. This is, I want to write a book. This is roughly the grand picture that I want to convey in this book. Okay, how do I go about organizing it and laying it out, breaking it down, and so on. So that's the start of the process. But usually you have one word or one image that sparks that curiosity, right? Um, so writing is one example. For members of the audience who engage in any of the fine arts or even in music, it's the same thing. You start with a blank canvas from nothingness. And it's not that you are trying to fill it in, but you're allowing things to reveal themselves.
Hmm.
Huh? So the nihilism, the negative portrayal of nothingness, is that nothingness is destroying the already present somethingness that's there, right? It's eradicating it. For me, in my interpretation of Daoism, it's the reverse. Nothingness is the purity, right? It's the authentic state from which everything starts and within which things then, they come up, they recede according to their own will.
So is
So
a fair analogy that, for example, the silence is necessary for music to exist within, or that the canvas is
yeah,
necessary for art to be painted upon.
yes, exactly. If there weren't spaces between the notes,
Mm-hmm.
you know, gaps of nothingness, then that's not music, right? It's just
Hmm.
one continuous note. That's not music.
Hmm.
So the way you space out the gaps in music
Mm-hmm.
determines the rhythm of the piece, the affect of the piece. Long pauses tend to elicit a different response than very short, succinct pauses.
Staccato, yeah.
Um, Nothingness helps to dilute things. So for example, ink wash painting in China, you have black ink. How do you dilute it? You add water to it, right? So you're spreading out the ink to create more space, right? So
Yeah.
you are reintroducing nothingness into the presence of the ink. In music, the blending and harmonizing of notes, rhythms, harmonics, all that has
Mm-hmm.
different effects with one's thinking. It's the same thing. Uh, Slow everything down, space things out, you see more clearly. And the Taoist idea of wandering in and amongst the objects that are before you, be it
Mm-hmm.
thoughts or physical things,
Mm-hmm.
gives you a different perspective
Mm-hmm.
and a deeper appreciation of that.
Yeah.
So nothingness can inform me in any activity, physical activity that I'm doing, mental activity that I'm doing, um, but also more abstractly, it's reshaped the way that I look at the world.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of focusing on the physicality of things, I tend to first observe the space around
Mm-hmm.
physical components of
Yeah.
things. So if I go into a building, okay, I see the space, the volume,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't look at the walls, I don't look at the columns, I don't look at the artwork hanging on the wall, the space, because that's what invites us into the building. It's the space,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's a very large space, it can be intimidating. If it's a very small, cramped space, maybe I feel claustrophobic. So
Mm-hmm.
one's relationship to nothingness at the physical level
Mm-hmm.
can impact the way one views the world, the way one lives one's life, um, in any number of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that most of us are taught to overlook the presence of nothingness, and we
Mm-hmm.
only focus on the
Sure.
beings, the somethingnesses that
Mm-hmm.
are present in the world,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what Taoism has taught me over the decades is to look at things in the reverse perspective,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Not to
Yeah.
see from without, but to see things from within.
Yeah.
And this is part of the program of self cultivation that Taoism discusses in the text,
Mm-hmm.
right? You nourish, you strengthen what is inside before you worry about nourishing and strengthening what is outside.
Mm-hmm.
Because the internal, right, your qi, your breath,
Mm-hmm.
your blood,
Yeah.
your saliva, your flesh, your organs, your bones, that's what carries you through life,
Mm-hmm.
not your physical beauty or lack thereof,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So if you ignore the inside and you pay too much attention to the outside, then a number of things will happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You'll run into difficulty, you'll create conflicts in the outside world, but
Mm-hmm.
also you'll be unaware of illnesses, the
Mm-hmm.
cause of illnesses which arise inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Taoism says once it's manifest outside on your skin, on your face or your body, it's too late in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be continuously aware of the dynamics, the relationship between your blood, your breath, your spirit, and then the physical skeleton
Mm-hmm.
that is what we call yourself, your personhood.
Right. Continuously be aware of our dynamics.
Yes, very good. You should copyright that.
Well, actually, if you make it to the last chapter, I do introduce an approach I'm calling the neurodynamic approach. So, so I am using it
Yeah.
actually. That's why I threw it in there. But okay, so David, I wanted to talk a bit about time. Time has always been
Mm.
somewhat of a fascination for me. And you introduce your chapter on time with the idea of inhabiting the restful nature of nothingness, the perspective of this unmoving hub in order to see the
Mhm.
rotation of the wheels, right? The spokes. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the question I have for you is how is time viewed differently in the Zhuangzi when compared, for example, with linear clock time?
Yeah. So I know there's A theory and B theory of time, and then more recently there's more. You have mathematical time. You have all these different types of time. Uh, in Tao Te Ching and Zhuangzi, they speak of time not in a progressive sense, but in a, if you like, a regressive sense.
Mm.
Now, regressive not negatively, but positively. Why? Because the further back in time you go, the closer to the Tao you are becoming. Right? The more forward thinking you are, the further away from the Tao you will be. So, uh, although there are notions of past, present, future in Daoist thought,
Mm.
the future is the least important of them, right? Because the future is something I cannot know.
Mm.
I know the present because I'm living the present. I know the past because I can trace the development or the unfolding
Mm.
of things that came before me.
Mm.
And I can go all the way back to the very beginning, the so-called great beginning, which is when there was only the Tao.
Mm.
So the beginning of all beginnings.
Mm.
Um, the temporality of nothingness may sound, how to say, illogical,
Sure.
nonsensical, because how can nothingness have it lacks spatiality? How can it have temporality? Um, because nothingness coexists with the Tao, and the Tao is a kind of constancy. Right? The Taoist texts are very clear to say the Tao is a constancy.
Mm.
Not to say that it is unchanging, but it persists through time and space at a
Mm.
level at which it is not bound to or affected by time and space.
So it exists
Now
outside
this,
of time and space, but it continually is in but it's constant. And there's
well,
movement. There's
but
is there
then the problem with
process?
that is
Yeah.
if you say the Tao exists outside of time and space, it must be existing in a realm that is somehow detached from the realm in which time and space
I see. I
are
see what you're saying.
existing,
Right. 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 Okay. I see
right?
that. Yeah.
And that's not the case.
Okay.
So the Tao is the universe,
Yeah. Yeah.
however big or small we want to define it.
The
Time and
Daoist.
space,
Okay. Sorry.
it is part of the universe only in the sense where there are things in the universe.
Mm.
So before things appeared in the universe, there was only the Tao. There was no time.
Mm.
There was no space. You only have the Tao. And if you say the Tao has temporality, spatiality, you are assigning it a form. You're assigning it properties that are connected to forms.
Mm.
And the Tao is formless,
Formless. Right. Yeah.
right? So the Tao is not, it's not beyond time and space because time and space don't
Right.
apply to it,
Sure. Sure. Well, can we say it
right? The Tao is,
interpenetrates?
yeah. So time and space are a way of measuring the existence of things
Mm.
within the realm, the all encompassing, all inclusive realm of the Tao.
Mm.
When things die, when they cease to be, and they return to state of nothingness, and then
Sure.
their chi, their breath is reconstituted and used. So it's not reconstituted in a Buddhistic sense of karma, right? Things are, you're reborn.
Mm.
Um, the breath of things, so the energy, the vitality of things, returns to the breath of the vitality of the universe. So
Mm.
it's one breath, just like the Tao, but it's pardoned off. It's partitioned off.
Sure. Sure.
So a little bit of the breath of the universe is given to me, right? And I am breathing in and out, but what I'm
Mm.
breathing in and out is that breath of the universe. It's one and the same thing,
Mm.
right? So time applies to things that are alive and things when they are dead, because when they're dead, they're going back to the constant eternal state of non-existence
Sure.
until such time that they are born, right?
Mm.
They are regenerated. Um, so this makes it interesting because then you enter into the comparison of lifespans. And Zhuangzi talks about that, right? The way, again, using language, we divvy up the world. Time is one way of doing that. So Zhuangzi speaks of, say, the the mosquito which lives, a matter of days or a matter of weeks, right? You have the mushroom that lives for one morning. Then you have humans that live 70 years. You have tortoises that can live 100 years. You have trees that can live for hundreds or thousands of years. Then you have mountains that can live for millions of years. So which one knows longevity or brevity of life, right? And his answer is there is no standard of the short-lived or the long-lived because it's all relative. So one of the tricky things of talking about Daoism is the relativism, right? And for some people, that's off-putting. Everything is relative and perspectival, including time. So from the point of view of Dao, there is no time, there is no space, because there is only Dao. From the point of view of yourself or myself, we know time based upon the time that we live and the time that has come before us. But we don't know the time that lies before us because we don't have a time machine. We can't go ahead in time to say, oh, yes, my descendants lived for X number of generations and then they all perished and that's the end of my line. We can't do that.
Yeah.
So I'm only able to know time and compare the temporality of things based on my ability to know what has come before me.
Sure.
But again, that is all relative because all the things that came before me, they have a temporality that's in the context of all the things around them, which have their own temporalities and spatialities, right? So the question for Daoism is not about comparing these different temporalities because from the grand perspective of the Dao, it's all one temporality, which is non-temporal or atemporal, right? It defies definition. It defies understanding because it is the reality and extension of the Dao itself. And there's no way to pin it down and say, this is the Dao, this is not the Dao. It's not possible to do that.
Sure. Okay,
So because we are talking about temporality from the point of view of being, we must also do the same thing for non-being, for nothingness.
Right.
So this is part of the argument that I developed. We have this meontological time, this time of nothingness. So it's a completely different way of measuring time.
And it's multidimensional in the sense that because Tao interpenetrates everything and begins with nothingness, it takes on different characteristics as it moves into different dimensions of experience, we might say. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, and there's also different implementations of nothingness, right? You have the original naked nothingness, which is the nothingness that is nourishing or sustaining, supporting the Tao, whatever language you want to use to say that, right? They are coexisting. Tao and nothingness at the moment of the Big Bang or the Great Beginning, whatever, they are there together. They're not equal, but they're side by side. Just like another pair of terms, yin and yang, right? They are there, they are distinguishable, but only when you stand across from the other. You're able to recognize it, right? From the point of view of myself, I can't know my own selfness, right? I need you to tell me what I am, just like you need me to tell you what you are, who you are. You yourself, you don't know because you can't see yourself. So the same with the perspective of the Tao, the perspective of nothingness. So it's highly contextual. The more things there are infiltrating, occupying, populating the primal nothingness of the great beginning, right? Then the finer, the more restrictive the understanding of time and space will be. The further back in time you go and the less populated this nothingness is, it becomes harder and harder to say what is time, what is space, because the space of time and the temporality of space are becoming so enormous, it's beyond our ability to measure them.
Measure it, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's this again this expanding and contracting,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all dynamic and flowing one
Mm-hmm.
way or the other, and it becomes
Right.
essentially impossible to say it is A or B or C or whatever. It's everything without being anything.
Mm-hmm. So, so David, when you arrived to this sort of insight, we might call it, or knowledge, as you were writing it,
Mm.
um, would you say that in your own phenomenological experience, you inhabit these two different modes or multiple different modes of time? How, I guess my question to you is also for the audience, and that is how has this new understanding of time been beneficial to you?
Uh, Several ways. One way, a way that as a practitioner you would understand if you cease viewing time as a series of linear moments.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a going forward and a going forward towards an end, right? Be that a purpose or a goal or what have you. If you live your life measuring it according to that standard, the closer you get to that goal, that end, death, whatever, the greater your anxiety becomes. So that's the problem with linearity. You get to an end and then everything stops. But in Daoism, if you want to describe it as a circularity, because everything in Taoism is circular,
Mm-hmm.
which means there is no starting or ending, right? They're relative. On a circle, you start and end wherever you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on a horizontal, here's the start, here's the end, that's it. But you wrap around, you create a loop, you have
Mm-hmm.
the freedom to go whatever way you want,
Sure.
however quickly or slowly you want. So to view time in a circular fashion, you begin with nothingness, you end with nothingness. Everything that happens in between is is just part of the journey. So the previous anxiety that is associated with the linearity of time, it disappears. Right? There's now a sense in Zhuangzi language, there's a letting be.
Mm-hmm.
There's or in Heideggerian's language, there's a Gelassenheit, there's a releasement. A releasement or a letting be into what? For Heidegger, it's the clearing. For Taoism, it's the clearing which is nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you're in a forest, the center of the forest, there's no trees, there's a clearing. In that clearing, the sun shines.
Mm-hmm.
Things reveal themselves. You stand there, and there's trees all around you. You look up, you see the sky, night sky, day sky, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
but suddenly you're exposed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And your former fear of all the monsters in the forest or whatever, they go away.
Mm-hmm.
So when you return to the Tao, you unite with the Tao, become one with the Tao, it's a returning to a sense of clarity. And they use the word clarity, meaning, which also means brightness or understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's the character with moon and sun, right? Radical of sun and
Mm-hmm.
then the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Two sources of light, which can both be simultaneously present,
Mm-hmm.
yet they also have the ability to block one another out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The moon passes in front of the
Okay.
sun, blocks the sun out. Right?
Sure.
So this is a metaphor for one's ignorance
Right.
or one's understanding.
Mm-hmm.
When you are one with the Tao, you are
Mm-hmm.
able to understand things that other people take as unknowable. So they are
Mm-hmm.
ignorant of it.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of time, time measured by the being of beings becomes linear temporality. It becomes uninteresting. It becomes boring.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just an ever increasing source of worry and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Taoism is trying to teach us how to relieve ourselves of worry and anxiety in the pursuit of things. And
Mm-hmm.
you do that by stop chasing things. And instead, you just focus on, again, to repeat myself, the life that you've been born with. And
Okay.
that life is part of the endless number of lives that have come before you, right? So you're just part of this chain of creation that is all Dao.
Mm.
There is no means to an end.
So,
It's just the
so,
way the universe is.
so the anxiety that someone feels when they are confronting a particular event that would normally elicit that anxiety, um,
Mhm.
instead of thinking of time linearly, if they adopt a non-linear perspective or a circular perspective rather than linear, they can
Mhm.
they would in their minds, for example, what relativize their perspective uh, based on a sort of cosmological vantage point, in which case it would diminish the anxiety that's connected to that event. Or could you, I guess, elaborate a little
Well,
bit more? But like, let's use that example,
yeah,
right? Someone's feeling
yeah.
anxious, they're moving towards the event. What would go through their
Mhm.
minds by adopting this stance? I'm trying to make it a little more concrete for the
So,
people. Yeah.
yeah, in a linear sense of time, I know something is going to happen. For
Mm.
example, I have this discussion with you.
Sure.
So the closer we get to the time of this discussion,
Mm.
if I'm a nervous person,
Mm-hmm.
I become increasingly nervous,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
When our discussion has ended, so that time, that moment in time is now in the past,
Mm-hmm.
my anxiety recedes.
Mm-hmm.
For Daoism, the problem is this is completely a self-devised, a self-created anxiety. There's no reason for me to feel that. Why? Because the moment of our discussion, it's not truly a fixed moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? It is part of an endless repetition of things appearing in time, receding in time, appearing in time, receding in time.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm? Um, so as you get closer to something, you are moving further away from something else.
Mm-hmm.
And as that previously getting close to thing now is in the past and you are getting further away from it, you're moving closer to something else.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? So if that is going to be a source of anxiety for you, always getting close to something, you will never escape it
Right.
in linear time.
Mm-hmm.
But in circular time, you recognize that everything is repetitive. You know, we have the phrase history repeats itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is very true. And Taoism recognized this. This is
Mm-hmm.
how they are able to learn of the principles in nature, heavenly
Mm-hmm.
principles,
Mm-hmm.
earthly principles,
Yeah.
simply through observation over time. And then you
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, we have seasons that are a certain length of time, and within each season, there are certain
Mm-hmm.
events that happen, and they
Mm-hmm.
are repeated
Mm-hmm.
over a number of years. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
there are variations. This
Mm-hmm.
is this is normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're repeatable. So if I know the repeatability of things, I have no need to fear them or to worry about them.
Mm.
And the
Okay.
most um, prominent example that Zhuangzi gives, because Lao Tzu doesn't talk so much about it, again, is death,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, so if you know that it is part of the natural fate of every created thing to die,
Mm-hmm.
to cease to be, but that ceasing to be is not the absolute removal of your existence, um, then you don't need to resist it or to worry about it
Mm-hmm.
because you know that you are not alone in having this particular encounter. Everything in the universe is born and everything will die. I
Mm-hmm.
just need to accept it whenever it comes. But because we're on a circle, I don't know how big the circumference of the circle is.
Mm-hmm.
On a line, I can know the line is there, it's on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
I can't escape it. But on
Mm-hmm.
the circle, I have no way of knowing where is the horizon of the circle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because as I'm walking, maybe it's moving in tandem with me, so it's always keeping equidistance,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but for a horizontal line, you'll run out of line, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I think.
so
Okay. Go ahead. I
no,
guess a
go
part of me
ahead.
just I'm thinking about this idea of circular time, and I guess in my mind it's always been more of a spiral time, in the sense that I do
Mhm.
think that there are some the process might be the same, but the content might differ. Or the last time that you were anxious in a particular situation, you may no longer be anxious. And yes, there is a
Mhm.
repetitive component, but if things are going, if you are harmonizing with the Tao or so forth, there is some sort of movement. I think beyond just repeating the exact same thing over and over again. That's just me being picky with with metaphors, but um,
Yeah, but the issue with the spiral,
sure.
because a spiral, unless it's part of a circle, is a closed
Okay.
loop. If it's an open-ended spiral,
Hmm.
then that implies there is a starting point, there is an ending point.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So you have
Okay.
your birth, you have your death, and you
Hmm.
have the spiral down. But in a circle, you're just going around the circle,
Okay. Okay.
and everybody is going around the circle.
Hmm.
Not going around the exact same circle, but there
Mm.
are infinite circles. And
Mm.
all of these circles
Hmm.
are what comprise the knowable reality of the Tao.
Okay.
Now, of course, we don't know.
Hmm.
Most of us do not know what happens in, after life,
Hmm.
right? But one would assume, and Zhuangzi hints at this, that we actually go through similar experiences in death as we do in life. It's just a different perspective,
Hmm.
and it requires a different um, toolbox of knowing,
Hmm.
right? So living death, if you like. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and this is why, again, many of his dream stories, his passages on death, are critiques
Hmm.
that we blame somebody for dying prematurely. We blame somebody for bringing about their own death because they screwed up here or they whatever, blah, blah, blah. And Zhuangzi's point is, well, how do you know? How do you know that the person in death is not as happy as they were formerly in life? Or
Hmm.
how do you know that they are not happier in death than they were in life? Why? Because in life we have the body. The body
Hmm.
has its ailments, it has its limitations, and these
Hmm.
become more and more apparent the older we get. But in
Hmm.
death, you are free of your physical form.
Right.
You are one with the Tao. So
Hmm.
you have limitless possibility and potential
Hmm.
to do what you could not formerly do with the
Hmm.
lived form.
Hmm.
So the same with time.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the
Right?
think the most beautiful things about digging deeper and deeper into this to Taoist work. Right, is just the way it capsizes conventional thinking, right? By
Yes,
bringing
it
forth all of
completely
these different
inverts everything,
perspectives. Yeah, yeah,
turns on
exactly.
its head.
Right,
Yes.
right, and provides you the different perspective to it, which completes it as a whole. Hence, the wholeness as a principle. Um, so I think we still have well, we're at 1 hour and 42 minutes, but it sounds like you're still down to continue a little bit.
Time is okay for me.
Okay, all right. So let's then move on to uselessness. Um,
Right.
and we've sort of alluded this. You've alluded to the useless tree. For
Mm-hmm.
those not well, to those listening, the useless tree, for example, it's a very popular story, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, right? But the idea here is that there's a
Yep.
carpenter and his
Yep.
assistant. They're walking around and they see this giant tree, but the carpenter barely pays attention to this tree. And the assistant's like, "Why aren't you looking at
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful tree?" He says, "Well, because it's completely useless to me. If I were to use its wood to create boats, they would sink. If I were to, use it to create a house, it would fall apart." And he goes on and on.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually he
Yeah.
has a dream. And this is the dreams that you referred to,
Mm-hmm.
where the tree is now talking to the carpenter and telling and scolding the carpenter, at least questioning him, challenging him. Who are
Yeah.
you to
Yeah.
tell me
Yeah.
that I'm useless? And it's because of my quote unquote uselessness that I've survived this long. It's because of my size and branches and so forth that villagers have built a shrine near me, right? It's because of my size that I can hold it, be a house to all sorts of animals and creatures. And so the carpenter wakes up,
Exactly. Yeah.
and when the assistant questions him again, he's he's changed his opinion and says, "We shall not, we're not going to talk about that. I was wrong."
Yeah. Yeah.
So beautiful story, and you talk about uselessness in many different ways. It goes beyond it, right? So I'm wondering if you
Mm-hmm.
could share a little bit about your thoughts on uselessness.
Yeah. This is another unique concept to Daoism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, both to Lao Tzu and to Zhuangzi.
Mm-hmm.
Lao Tzu speaks of the hub of the wheel, which you alluded to earlier, that although the hub is basically a nothingness, um, you have the spokes around it and then the rim of the wheel, because the nothingness at the hub on its own is useless, yet it enables an axle to be inserted, which then permits the wheel to move.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Um, Lao Tzu also speaks of the clay vessel. And this was the inspiration for Heidegger in his essay Das Ding on the thing,
Mm-hmm.
where he talks about the pouring forth of the jug and all that. So Lao Tzu says, oh, you get clay and you mold a clay a jug out of it. The empty space within the jug, while it's empty, is useless, right? But that useless empty space has the capacity to retain liquid.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? If it were solid clay, you could not pour water or wine into it. So then the vessel itself becomes useless. It becomes paperweight.
Mm-hmm.
Zhuangzi goes further than that because he always does. He always,
Yeah.
he takes Lao Tzu's ideas and he gives them a lot of creative twisting. And that's what makes his text so brilliant, but also challenging. Zhuangzi will speak of the useless mind, and he will also speak of the useless body. Um, in addition to useless things. So why is he doing that? Well, he's doing it to force us to question and rethink our priorities. We always look to, and in ancient China, a lot of these texts were written for the benefit of a ruler as a kind of manual or guide on how to achieve a return to peace, because during this period there was civil war in China. So how do you restore order? So in Daoism, uselessness is not a way of directly attaining peace, but it's a way of surviving. So in a time of conflict,
Mm-hmm.
such as the Warring States period in China, you can have a massive and brilliant army. They're very useful, and I, as the state that's being threatened, I also have a massive and brilliant army, and we fight. So we have two things that are very useful clashing. What is the result? Well, there's just further clashing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is resolved.
Yeah.
Or one party defeats the other party, but at a very high cost. So Zhuangzi says, would it not be better for the sake of both states to avoid war? Because war doesn't solve anything, as we see in our own times today. So how do you avoid war? Well, you can appear to be weak, but then you're just inviting invasion.
Yeah.
Right? You can bribe and buy off the other states. In ancient China, it would be through, the king offering his daughter in marriage, so you don't attack your own house, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that may fail as well. So Zhuangzi says, well, it would be better to appear utterly useless, and then nobody pays you any attention. So if you have nothing of value to tempt somebody else, they won't even look at you. And if they don't pay attention to you, they won't contemplate what can be derived in using you, either in conquering you, or in the case, and I would often say to students, okay, you're in high school, you're very good at mathematics, and then the class bully is really bad at mathematics, because usually they're bad at math, right?
Sure.
Because they're a jock or something. So how do you avoid being bullied if you're the brilliant mathematics kid in class? Well, you appear dumb. You appear stupid. And then the bully won't come to you to copy the homework, right? Although you can do it and you're brilliant and you submit and you get straight grades, but you give the impression of being utterly useless. Then those people who are seeking merit out of you or a thing, they pass by you.
Mm-hmm.
So for Zhuangzi, this is a survival strategy,
Mm-hmm.
like the tree that appears in the dream. So all the pretty flowering and fruiting trees, they are stepped on, their branches are pulled down, their fruits are plucked, and they suffer misery because we humans and other animals, we view their flowers, their beauty, their fruits as something worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
So at the cost of the life of the tree, we satiate our own desires. As opposed to the smelly, twisted, rotting tree, no animal will make it its nest.
Mm-hmm.
No person will climb on it. It has no fruit. It has no flowers. It appears as dead.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why the tree is able to survive for centuries
Yeah.
unharmed,
Right.
right? So the same thing for us or for anything in nature.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to maximize your life,
Mm-hmm.
you don't flaunt, you don't openly display
Mm-hmm.
your natural abilities, which then are inviting others, other things, or whatever, to come
Mm-hmm.
and take advantage of them.
Sure.
So what do? Zhuangzi says, Lao Tzu would say, you conceal them within. And only when you encounter another person who is your equal, i.e., another Taoist, then you can reveal the true extent of your skills.
Mm-hmm.
But to somebody who is only searching for a means to an end, a way to
Mm-hmm.
gain an upper hand, an
Mm-hmm.
advantage in the
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
through brute strength,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant mind, physical beauty, wealth, whatever, if
Mm-hmm.
you hide it away, then you can preserve it, you can
Mm-hmm.
maintain it,
Right.
and use it when it actually becomes necessary for you in
Mm-hmm.
that moment. So
Mm-hmm.
it's usefulness. It's a way of living in a world that is full of potential,
People who
threats
want to
and
exploit
injury.
you, or right. Right.
Exactly.
And just to be clear, right? So, Zhuangzi is not saying you should be entirely useless. Rather, being useless can be a great strategy for survival. So, all right. It also does point to the idea of people that in society that are considered useless by
Mm-hmm.
others. For example, there are lots of people who come to me who are quote unquote failure to launch kids, right? Uh, Kids
Okay.
who never quite entirely, um, like let's say they grew up in a respectable family. This is a very prototypical case, right? One
Uh-huh.
of the siblings does very well. They become, I don't know, an attorney or a professor or a doctor or whatever. And then the other one ends up sort of seemingly stagnating in some way, or to the parents' eyes, they have become useless. Lots of times in these particular scenarios, when I speak and spend enough time with the person who is quote unquote useless, we end up identifying that there are in fact many strengths, but that were simply not cherished or seen by the parents, and they're so stuck in this frame of abstractly of what they should or should not do, that they end up being too fearful of what their potential is with what their strengths actually originally were, right?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think
And
one of the
that's exactly what Taoism will teach such
right,
a person,
yeah,
to
yeah,
know your inner strengths,
mm-hmm,
your inner limitations,
yeah,
and to live accordingly with them,
mm-hmm,
and not to try and alter them to appease or, as I said, to evade
mm-hmm,
what other people want from you.
yeah,
Huh? So
excellent,
the parents with the so-called successful child, they're measuring success in a materialistic sense.
mm-hmm,
They're not
mm-hmm,
measuring it in the sense of value of life itself.
sure,
The fact
yeah,
that you have the so-called useless child, but the child is healthy
mm-hmm,
and perhaps they are able still to marry and have children
mm-hmm,
and to find contentment in life, that is successful.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And that is being useful to themselves
mm-hmm,
because that's what the Tao gave them. So if
mm-hmm,
they are maximizing that, if they
mm-hmm,
are utilizing that, then they are not useless.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But the successful child is useful in the Confucian sense
right,
because that's how the Confucians measure success. How
mm-hmm,
much money do you have? How
yeah,
many, children you have? How big is your house? How many degrees you have? But for the
mm-hmm,
Taoists, that's all meaningless.
mm-hmm,
It can be meaningless if inwardly you are dispirited, you are unhappy,
Hmm.
and you are constantly allowing yourself to be pushed and pulled by others, and you're not living life as the way you want to live it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So Taoism would view that as a failure,
Hmm.
right? For
Okay.
the sake of
Yeah.
artificially meeting the criteria of usefulness. They would say no,
Hmm.
only in human society, but not in nature.
Right. I liked how the direction we moved in here, um, and
So
I
the challenge for you is not to convince that person, but to convince the
the
parents
parents. Yeah, it's always a
to
big
stop
part of the
judging the
work.
child
Yeah.
as successful, as useful or useless,
Yeah.
and to encourage the child to to how to say
Be assertive
to unshackle
in some
themselves
ways and free themselves. Yeah.
of the the weight that they have put on their own shoulders.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They need that encouragement
Yeah.
and they need that support, and then they will flourish in
Hmm.
a way that is natural to them.
Right. Yeah. The parents' argument will be, okay, sure, they're flourishing the way that they naturally are, but we're still supporting them financially the entire way. So, what would you respond to that, David?
Well, you are acting as a surrogate for the Tao. The Tao supports everything that is created,
Hmm.
no matter how successful or how much of a failure the thing turns out to be.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Lao Tzu
Sure.
says this: the Tao is the mother. It raises things, it nourishes things, but it never has a hand in the fate of things in terms of,
Hmm.
oh, you must go down this way, you must not go down this way.
Hmm.
Right? It's up to
Yeah.
the thing itself to decide how it wants to live
Hmm.
life.
Maybe I can
The
also
job of the mother is
justify.
simply to raise it to a state where it can become self-sufficient and independent,
Right. Okay. Fair
and
enough.
to be there in the case where the child needs further support, further nourishment from the mother,
Hmm.
that the mother is there and available.
I was going to say maybe I'll tell them that the Tao gifted them with the ability to earn enough money in order to support such an individual. So what a
Yes, you should
blessing
have
that you
have them
have
read
enough to give.
the Dao De Jing and Zhuangzi.
Right, right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there's one other parable I wanted to explore with you because you had a very different interpretation of it than the ones that I've heard or the way I kind of understand it. And that's the man that was afraid of his own footprints. So there was a man that was afraid of his footprints and his shadow. And so he decided to start running to see if he can outrun his footprints and shadow. But the more that he
Mhm.
ran, the more footprints he left, and his shadow never left his side. And
Yes.
so Zhuangzi critiques that this person is utterly ridiculous because all he had to do is sit down underneath the shade of a tree and rest.
Uh-huh.
And in that rest and
His
under that
shadow
shade,
disappears.
his shadow disappears and his footprints would stop. So
Exactly.
let me just share my the way that I always understood this, and then I want others
Hmm.
to hear your perspective, right? So the
Well, you, you
context.
you tell them what my perspective is. I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, let me. I don't think I
and then
fully
and then
understood your
I'll
perspective, David.
I'll
That's why I wanted to ask you.
it's
Okay.
years ago now. I forgot what I said, so
Okay.
you have to
Okay.
refresh my memory.
Okay. So
So
the
what
way
what's your
I
understanding?
okay. So the way I
Hmm.
always sort of viewed it was in the context of meditation. Actually,
Uh-huh.
um,
Uh-huh.
the shadow for me always brought up ideas of the shadow from Jung, the parts of ourselves that we reject. Obviously, that's not what was intended there, but this idea of the shadow can still be understood as the dark side of a person or a part of themselves that, uh, well, I guess we could sort of use that idea that they reject, but the footprints, their history, their thoughts, their narratives, their memories, things that they're trying to escape, an identity from the past that they're ashamed of, or ideas, and people are trying to run away from them, right? I don't
Hmm.
want to identify with this negative aspect within myself. I don't want to remember the time I was bullied or the time that I was rejected in some way. So they try and prematurely change without integrating the values of the past in some way. And then, the solution the entire time was for them not to be psychologically continually ruminating and trying to simply ignore these sorts of things, but to sit there and observe and just let them notice that the life of thoughts and narratives are ephemeral. They come and they go. and one can detach
Yeah.
or establish a healthy distance from them, and they can simply view them, pass and go, without straining or forcing themselves in some way.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so that's sort of the basic idea of how I understood that
Sounds
story.
reasonable enough, but
Mm.
not
Oh,
what Zhuangzi means.
yeah. So that's why. And then the other part to that
So
is the
so
shade of a tree. So that's also under
uh, uh,
natural principles. I was thinking about that also. But go ahead,
okay.
go ahead. Good. So you remember your
So
perspective.
so so
Yeah.
refresh me and let the listeners know what my stance is.
Well, I don't remember what your stance was because I didn't really
Oh,
understand it, David. That's why I was trying to
mutual
get you to
forgetting.
share it. I think it. I mean, it had to do with maybe it related to the thing actually.
Let me see if I can find it. Ah, yes, related to the thing on page 35.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, there we go. See, it's coming back to me. Yeah, yeah. So the yeah.
So based
So
on the above, we can describe the relationship between the thing and signifier as a muted dependency of recollection. Uh, but I didn't really say much about the shadow there.
yeah. So this you see why I got lost
Uh,
there. So I wanted to really understand this from your perspective. And what did Zhuangzi mean by it then, if not what I
oh,
was
so I
mentioning?
was, yeah, the reason I quoted this passage because I was talking about the concept of trace.
Trace and signifiers. That's
And
right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, the trace of signification
yeah.
overrides the oneness of things. So the footprints are traces, right? The Chinese word for footprint, ji,
Mm-hmm.
right? We translate it as trace, but it literally means the footprint on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Now why is that very poetic? Because you walk on the beach, you leave a footprint, but as soon as a wave comes ashore, it erases your footprint.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your shoe is wet, you're walking on dry ground, you leave imprints of your shoe, but when the sun comes out, it evaporates. So traces they vanish, right? As you
Mm-hmm.
said, they're ephemeral. Uh-huh. Um, so if we measure, uh, if we use words or things,
Mm-hmm.
signifiers,
Mm-hmm.
to measure uh, the collectivity of all things, then we will fail to do so in an accurate sense, because traces are ephemeral, they're fleeting, they're
Mm-hmm.
temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And Zhuangzi says this: you um, you cannot know the walker by the footprints they leave, or something like that, right?
Okay, sure.
So all you know is the imprint of the shoe on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
but from that you cannot know the person who is leaving that imprint,
Mm-hmm.
other than like the size of their foot.
Okay.
But you don't know, their thoughts, their feelings, their
Yeah, yeah. There's a very small fragment,
well,
right?
I mean, today modern science you can know their height and their weights and all that, but getting aside, so the idea that um, if we want to know the original thing of something, if we go back to the time of primordial chaos, the state of oneness, so when everything is existing in an unnamed state,
Mm-hmm.
right? The original harmonious state of the universe, before humans created language and then started dividing everything through names and whatnot.
Well,
Um, that's the time of things, right? Of all things, because they've all things. So the universal and then all the attributes. So the primary, the originator, the progenitor thing, and all subsequent things after it are essentially one and the same thing,
mm,
right? The first tree and all the trees that came after are still trees. But if we try to measure the first tree according to the traces of all the subsequent trees,
mm-hmm.
we will come up short, right?
Mm-hmm.
We will have a lacking,
Mm-hmm.
because the subsequent trees are not the same as the original tree
Mm-hmm.
in I mean, in their treeness, yes. But in terms of their proximity to the Tao, no. Right? So again, back to the idea of time unfolding linearly,
Mm-hmm.
the more into the future you go, the further away from the Tao you become. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is to go backwards in time,
Mm-hmm.
to know things in their closer state to the Tao, their more original state. I
Okay.
mean,
So,
by
so,
which I mean the state of oneness with the Tao. So traces
uh-huh.
do not facilitate that, right? You need to go back to the thing that is leaving the trace,
Yeah.
right? And then the thing that produced all the things leaving these traces, because the
Mm-hmm.
original thing left no traces.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because the original thing was unnamed. Because it's unnamed,
Mm-hmm.
we are excluding a lot of things that are within that thing,
Mm-hmm.
but we've not found the words to describe them,
So,
right?
so, so sorry. Could you connect this to the story then? So how does that?
So the idea is you live your life chasing after various things,
Okay.
goals or running away from something or whatever.
Okay.
So you are leaving a lot of footprints on the ground.
Okay.
The more footprints you leave on the ground, the more the world is able to know of you.
Okay.
The more the world knows of you in terms of your identity
Mm-hmm.
or your selfhood,
Mm-hmm.
the less unified you will be with the Tao.
Okay.
So for Zhuangzi, the idea is to be without trace. And this is the sage. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to be wuji, traceless.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you traceless? You are traceless by becoming one with all things. So you
Mm-hmm.
are indistinguishable
Mm-hmm.
from the other things in the world. One of the ways you do that is you resort to a state of namelessness.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what to call you.
Okay.
When you are without name,
Yeah.
people cannot ask about you
Right. Right.
because they don't know your name. So they
Okay.
try to describe you, but they end up describing your
Mm-hmm.
traces,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, a way of living in the world anonymously, protecting yourself, living uselessly,
Mm-hmm.
is to be traceless.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are able to perfect that, then you are constantly in tune with the Tao.
Okay.
So the tree that casts the shadow, we could say, is a metaphor for the Tao.
Right. Right.
Because you have the tree, which is in the light,
Mm-hmm.
it's the visible, the known, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have the shadow that is cast, which is the mystery, the profundity of the unknowable.
Mm-hmm.
When you return from the light, so
Mm-hmm.
your traces are known in the world, when you return to the state of the dark, of the profound,
Mm-hmm.
to the root of the tree,
Mm-hmm.
which is hidden under the ground, then you are living your life the way the Tao meant it to be lived. You are living naturally.
I see.
So in accordance with heavenly principle, natural law, all of that stuff. So you're not living for others, you're living for the sake of life itself.
Mm.
Right?
Okay.
So the more you are on social media and blah 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 blah, the more traces you leave in the world, the more breadcrumbs you leave in the world,
Mm-hmm.
the easier it is for people to search you out, find you, take advantage of you. And when your usefulness has been fulfilled, what do? They discard you
Mm-hmm.
if you don't die in the process.
Right.
So the way to prevent that from happening is to become traceless, to
Mm-hmm.
become anonymous. How do
Mm-hmm.
you do that? You hide in the shadows. You
Mm-hmm.
don't reveal yourself unless you are joined by other people who are also in the shadows with you. So you are kindred spirits.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Sure.
Zhuangzi is criticizing this guy for thinking literally, right? Thinking in terms of the the clarity of being, and
Mm-hmm.
not thinking in terms of the the darkness of non-being,
Mm-hmm.
which is the flip side of that reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? The
Mm-hmm.
reality of thingliness, of
Mm-hmm.
knowing things,
Mm-hmm.
versus the reality of non-thingliness or not non-knowing or unknowing things.
Mm-hmm.
parallel universes, but the same thing, just
Hmm.
different perspective,
I see.
right?
Right. So we are at 2 hours and 11, which is quite long for one of these episodes. The audience is probably nodding off, or you
I
know,
think you must be
yeah.
tired for standing for 2 hours too.
It's not so bad. I just have to switch positions once
Okay.
in a while. But
Okay.
David, I know that you wanted to touch on my book as well. I know you did a brief dive into it. Um, I guess, do you have any questions for me or any thoughts that you wanted to
Yeah,
share?
I think maybe like final point of discussion,
Sure.
um, perhaps you could tie in a little bit more uh, your own work and how Daoism is in some way, I don't want to say facilitating, um, but what kind of relationship you see forming between your own work and what Lao Tzu, Zhuangzi, or contemporary people such as myself or other scholars of Daoism are doing. How
Sure.
are they able to weave together? Because
Hmm.
I've noticed in psychiatry and psychology and other sciences, this is a growing trend that people more and more are turning to Taoism to get
Oh, really?
insights into mind, into thinking, into of course emotions and moods and conceptions of self and all of that. So I would just be curious because you do have best-selling books, several
No,
best-selling books.
that's
So
no,
um,
it's only one.
the most recent one talks quite a bit about Taoism. So how you came into it and how it's perhaps informing what you're doing. I think that would be of interest for listeners who came to perhaps maybe hear what I have to say and are not familiar with yourself.
Hmm.
And now that they are curious about what you are doing, you can invite them to do more reading. So
Yeah.
uh,
How is
mm,
Taoism informing my work? Well, first of all, I didn't know that there are many other psychotherapeutic people that have been really delving into Taoism. But nonetheless, I've always been interested in Taoism and Zen. That's always been a part of my life in some way.
mhm,
But I've always been steeped in Western intellectual traditions throughout all of my career, living in the United States and being educated from that perspective. And now that I've basically been on my own with my own practice, and yes, I still teach at Pepperdine. I've had the
yes,
liberty to start re-exploring and examining the fundamental texts from a more technical perspective. I don't claim myself to be a scholar of Taoism. I refer to you and Larson Di Fiore and Livia Cohn and Harold Roth and all you people out there that are doing such great work. But of course, I love
yeah,
to improve my knowledge on it. So how has it been convert? Like where I find a lot of interest is when I was reading, like the Huainanzi before the Lao Tzu. I
mhm,
never fully read the Zhuangzi, and then the Huainanzi and the Neya were both also texts that I never fully read until before writing this book. The parallels to me were very fascinating. So the first, major convergence, like I mentioned, is this evolutionary mismatch theory, as it relates to
mhm,
being unnatural in different ways. The focus on, for example, intuition and its expression and spontaneity as one of my principles, right? Um, you know, Historically speaking, it's been looked down upon, but now there's been far more research into the fact that intuition is actually very well informed and involves several
mhm,
nonlinear, rapid automatized processes within the brain that converge upon many areas to inform the individual towards a particular decision as it's being made. Um,
mhm,
so and then so there's a whole review that I've done on that literature and showing the ways in which science can help clarify when intuition would be best used for decision making versus when analysis might outperform intuition. There's also this
right,
idea, right, that the intent of being, and you've mentioned we've talked about this, the intent of being good or virtuous sort of nullifies the virtue itself, And so it made me think, okay, well, if aligning with the Tao would naturally lead us to be virtuous without needing to use the word, is there
Hmm.
actually truth to that? So the other thing I looked at was moral intuitionism. You know, are
Right.
infants actually sort of paragons of the Tao? And so I looked at studies of babies that don't have the capacity to speak. Do they engage in
Yep.
behaviors that actually indicate that they have some moral compass, and the seeds of
And the
morality?
answer is what?
It's yes. It's yes. Specifically, there are things
Good.
like, yeah, and I list all the studies there, and I didn't look just at babies, but I also looked at rats and other animals engaging in
Okay.
behaviors that are just, so contrary to what you would intuitively think, that it's just it's a wonder to me why anyone would think that we weren't born with some of these potentials involved. So those are big parts of it. There's also, of course, the idea of Wu Wei, and in the West, they speak about their version of it, which is flow, and the idea that,
Yep.
well,
Yep.
some people. I was asked this question, like, isn't it true that Wu Wei is just basically being lazy? It's a silly question, but it
Hmm.
shows how some people might misunderstand it. And when we
Right.
talk
Right.
about
Right.
the instances when people are completely, well, whether a sage is being described as being aligned with the Tao, or whether we're talking about, if we talk about, examples here, like, I'm a musician, I play music, and when I do perform live, there are times when I lose my sense of self and the sense of time, and then there are
Yeah.
times when I
Exactly. Yeah,
become
exactly.
self-conscious. And when I'm
Hmm.
self-conscious, I can mess something up. It's far more high of a probability, and it's happened before. I've said this before. And again, when people are functioning in these states of, I'm just going to use the Western term flow for now, um,
Uh-huh.
people do end up performing at their best, right? And at their most
Yeah.
skillful.
Yeah.
When someone masters a skill or a trait, um, it's not out of the question that they would be functioning worse in some way. And so those are just some of the resonances that I put in there. I mean, the seven principles, I came up with the acronym CPR West, and
Right.
it's
Right.
creativity, process, relationship. So process, I know you might not agree with as much, but again, it is principles of nature. Actually, I didn't put Tao, so actually maybe
Yeah.
we
Yeah. Yeah.
put that. And then the West is wholeness, equilibrium, spontaneity, and transformation. And so
Hmm.
all of these principles also have classical Taoist parables that fit very well with them. For
Right.
example, the wholeness principle that we've touched on in this discussion, I link the useless tree parable. Um,
Hmm.
for creativity, I think about creativity, not so much the act of creativity, the quality of creativity, but the fact that we're continually being created, right? And it's this unfolding, this budding is nonstop, right? And so
Hmm.
change is, for me, the action of creativity. And what frightens most
Yeah.
people is uncertainty, the uncertainty of change. And so
Yeah. The unknown. Right. And
the
that's what
unknown,
change
yeah.
is. The unknown.
And so that
Hmm.
one, there's also a very famous, the story of the diviner and his lost horse, right? And it's a very powerful parable, and it's very popular because it's so powerful. But it also
Hmm.
shows
Hmm.
why uncertainty can be approached in different ways, right? Not just as a threat, but as an opportunity, that we don't have to just think of the short term, but also the long term. And where I think science enters is providing a little more specificity as to when inhabiting a mode of unknowing, for example, may be beneficial, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's actually first order uncertainty versus second order uncertainty. Like, first order being that uncertainty that we don't fully, no, first order uncertainty being we know all the variables, in which case actually analysis is beneficial in those moments. But second order uncertainty is when the most variables are unknown or very limited, in
Hmm.
which case a discovery oriented approach, a process oriented approach, a radical acceptance of not knowing, right, is a way to approach it. And it teaches you, I think
Yeah.
classical Taoism teaches us how to question and challenge conventional thought, even outside of these texts, like beyond it. Like, how do we, like, when
Hmm.
something is so intuitive to me, or said in a way that is sort of this herd mentality, I tend to always invert it now to see if the opposite is true, right? Like, it sort of exercises that
Yeah.
that ability. And finally, from a clinical perspective, and there's a lot more in the book, but from a clinical perspective, right, it's okay, instead of there's something wrong with me, what if we're just misaligned with natural conditions or natural principles, right?
Mm.
So instead of say, again, so it creates a non-pathologizing framework for understanding clinical diagnosis, right? So instead of someone
Right,
with
right, right.
ADHD, again, having the stigma of having ADHD and I'm different from others and I'm wrong. No, no, you're not wrong. You're duh.
You're just
Your
you.
inner power, yeah, is being expressed
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
society that may not be a perfect fit, but there may be ways for us to find you a profession or something else where it does fit, right? Or I tell my students all
yeah,
the time, like, who the hell do you think discovered fire? What was it? The person with good inhibition skills and good self-restraint that decided to run up to a tree that was struck with a lightning bolt on fire and put a piece of log there and say, hey, let's see if this catches on fire and see what happens here. No, it was probably the disinhibited person, probably the person with
yeah.
ADHD that did that and helped that happen, right? So there's a place for, I
Uh,
think, neurodivergence, and everyone in the system, and this Daoist framework, I think, fits very well with that. And um, so I reconceptualize many conditions, and I'm now publishing a new actual scholarly paper with a group of people now, formalizing this approach in more depth, and really basically integrating two things. One for me is what I call one is mismatch theory. How do we resolve that mismatch theory to the best of our abilities in a modern life without becoming hunter gatherers again? And then the
yeah,
second one is what I'm calling a nature relation mismatch. Kind of comes from the world relation, or life world, or these sort of existential
right, right,
terms.
right.
Because at the end, I do
Mm.
consider this a bit more of a contemplative existential framework, in the sense that I think everyone is subject to these different principles. Everyone is a creative process that's relational, right? Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so
No,
yeah,
I look
so
forward to that. Yeah.
sure, sure. Just I hope that was helpful to you. And
Yes, yes.
this was such a pleasant conversation, and there's still much to be discussed. Actually, I still have tons of questions for you, but we're definitely gone way too long on this one. So if you're open to it, I'd love to speak to you again in the future. And
Absolutely.
now, before we end, I always ask all of my guests 10 rapid fire questions where you just give one word responses to, or very short responses
Uh,
to. Are you okay with that?
okay. Sure.
Okay. And they're very random questions, so it's not necessarily all related. But
Okay.
okay. So I guess the first question I had for you, you already answered. But let me first ask you this: what is your preferred translation of the Tao Te Ching and the Zhuangzi?
Um, hmm. Outage would be former teacher of mine, Richard Lin. Zhuangzi, can I say my own?
Sure.
Burton Watson.
Okay. Wait, do you have your
Burton
your
Watson.
own translation beyond the
Well,
passages in your
I don't
book?
have a full translation. It's scattered through papers and books and whatnot, but
Oh, I see. I see. Okay. All right.
it's getting close to one. But Burton Watson.
Good. Well, I'm looking for. Is that a future project of yours, by the way, like a
Um,
translated version?
mm, not a direct translation because there's already enough out there that
Sure.
probably won't get published. So I work in translation with um, into the books, the first book and then the one I'm doing now. Um, you mentioned about um, knowing what we don't know. I'm actually that's the topic of the second Zhuangzi book I'm writing right now.
Hmm.
Uh, Knowing what we don't know.
Interesting. Okay.
Uh, so yeah, there's a translation, him and a lot of commentaries again, and then the third one that I plan to do on morality or ethics, virtue, um, maybe in a couple of years from now. So there'll be more. So by the time the three books are done, I should be close to having almost the whole Zhuangzi translated. But yeah,
Well, actually, those are all very exciting projects. I'm looking forward to them actually
yeah, I'm surprised the one
becoming realized.
on non-knowledge, as I call it. So knowing what we don't know, Zhuangzi actually has quite a lot to say about that.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
When that
So
book comes out, let me
it's
know.
been fun so far.
Okay, excellent. When that book comes out, let me know. I'd love
I'll
to.
send you a draft.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to check it out, and also maybe we could even do a podcast with it. I could help you sell if
Sure,
you're interested. Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Question two. Yeah.
yeah. Question two. What music do you like to listen to?
Um, Jazz, specifically Keith Jarrett.
Okay, excellent. Do you like Dave Brubeck?
Yeah, I like Jarrett's solo piano.
Okay, okay, fair enough.
So when I write, that's what I listen to.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And name a philosopher of great influence to you.
Besides Zhuangzi,
Yeah, besides Zhuangzi.
I'd have to be Heidegger.
Heidegger. Okay, it would make sense
Yeah.
with your other book, Daoist
I
Resonances.
mean, he's out of
Heidegger.
fashion now in Europe, but yeah, no denying his influence.
Hmm. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, would you say that you understand 100% of his book, Being in Time?
Being in Time,
Yeah.
actually, I don't like that book.
Oh, okay. So you read the
So
books
one word
after the
answer,
turn?
no. Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Those weren't actual
After
questions.
after the war, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Do you think the universe is inherently meaningful, meaningless, or something else?
Can I ask for clarification?
No.
No. Okay. Is the universe meaningful or meaningless? Short answer, I would say meaningless. Longer answer, we imbue meaning to it,
Okay, all right. And
but on its own, yeah, no higher purpose.
okay, and what comes first to you, matter or consciousness?
Mm, matter or consciousness? Well, that's kind of a chicken and egg thing, yeah. If you're not conscious, how can you know of things? And if there are no things, how can you be conscious of them?
Okay,
Is
okay,
a
good answer.
Zhuangzian reply, yeah?
Okay, fair enough.
No comment.
Okay, all right.
I abstain.
Okay, if you had one lesson that you could impart to the whole audience here, that
Yes.
comes the most profound insight that you felt like you've gained perhaps from your studies, what would it be in a statement
Um,
or as a question? Whatever you'd like.
yeah. Uh, to live your life as freely as you can.
Okay. And do you believe in UFOs and aliens?
Sure.
Okay. And what was the last book you read?
Oh my God, I read so many. Um, the last book I read, probably yours.
Okay,
Seven
such
Principles of Nature.
such an honor. Awesome, thank you, David. Okay,
Yeah, like from start to finish. Yeah, yours.
okay, excellent.
I mean, I'm reading other things at the same time, but that's
Hmm.
for work. So I'm just looking for specific stuff. But
Hmm.
cover to cover, it'd be your book. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Wow, you read the whole thing. That was pretty
Mhm.
fast. Okay.
Yeah, it's good reading. I
Oh,
recommend it.
all right, thanks, appreciate it. All right, and I guess my last question for you: what would you say? Well, what would be a prediction on the future for you, and what's the place of Taoism?
A prediction of the future. Uh, don't know.
Or maybe
No way to know that.
how do you think Taoism may play an important role in the future? How about that?
Well, I hope more people take an interest in it. Uh, because if that happens, then there should be more common sense in the world,
Hmm.
less friction, conflict, more um, caring towards ourselves and others and the planet that we're on. I don't want to get all like how to say hippie-ish or whatever. I mean, we're, as our students and those of us listening who teach, our students constantly remind us,
Mm.
yeah, the world's pretty messed up right now.
Yeah.
Is Daoism a solution? Directly, no, because unless we act upon the advice that it gives us, things will just continue as they are.
Mm.
If we do act, change will happen quite slowly,
Mm-hmm.
because the change required is quite substantial.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's not to say we have to go back to the Stone Age or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people misunderstand Taoism or mischaracterize it as primitivism, and that's not what it's saying. Um, but the teaching that we must recognize we are simply one living thing, one living species amongst infinite, countless other living species, yet we dominate
Mm-hmm.
all of them, is completely unjustified.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to regain our humility and learn to live in harmony with nature, um, natural world. So moderation in terms of use of natural resources, restraint in terms of um, the you know getting rid of the process of pollutants.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, the Basically it's like the butterfly effect. Whatever
Right.
we do
Right.
ripples,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
however small that may be.
Mm-hmm.
So Taoism can um, make us more aware of that,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully cause us to stop and reconsider what we're doing, not because it's right or wrong, but because it's necessary for the sake of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
As tacky as that may sound,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, population control is also part of that solution.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Whether technology AI can also help, perhaps. Certainly, it's helping you guys in the sciences. In the humanities, maybe it's making more trouble than than doing good. But yeah, learning to weave different paths with
Mm-hmm.
each successive generation.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just keep doing the same old thing. You know, we are created as an adaptable species, and we have to learn how to you know get in touch with that adaptability. Uh, Once again, for the sake of others for whom evolution works much more slowly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that would be, yeah, my only real wish.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
This
and that's
human.
why I teach Taoism in university, and hope that the students, if they take anything away from the courses, it's that life is finite. You need to make the most of it, but
Mm-hmm.
making the most of it not for your own selfish aggrandizement, but for the welfare, the betterments of all living things.
Yeah.
We need to come together to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This idea of the dominance of humanity over nature. There was a great line in your book, many great lines in your book, but this one struck me particularly, and it's the idea that nature doesn't operate through hierarchy, but through balance. And I think it's
Yeah,
such a nice shift in the mode of thinking and attitude towards the world, right? Instead of necessarily um, falling into this again this idea of dominance and aggrandizement and ego inflation that ultimately
hmm,
lots of people are falling into in society. It's a very complex issue, but I think Taoism
yeah.
definitely plays a big step forward, and I think your work also helps quite a bit by helping us balance being with non-being. And David, thank you so much for your presence and your wisdom and all your knowledge. It's such a pleasure speaking with you, and well,
No, thank you,
Aldrich,
Aldrich.
a dream
I,
of
I
mine to
I
meet
enjoyed
you.
our conversation.
Yeah,
I hope our listeners enjoy as much as I did.
wonderful, wonderful.